By day, he was just a zombie father who doted on his daughter. By night, he was an apocalypse hero who tore through zombie hordes with his bare hands. Because after being bitten by a zombie, this man somehow became an S-rank zombie himself. With just one look, he could terrify low-level zombies into submission. And in this world, zombies had evolved all kinds of abilities, including skill fusion, disguise, and replication. Just moments ago, he was supposed to end his own life. But then, a goddess with golden wings covering the sky suddenly descended. She gave him 99 chances to protect his daughter. Every time he failed to save her because of his own mistake, he would put a bullet in his own head without the slightest hesitation. But no matter how hard he fought, he was always just one step short. As the number above his head slowly decreased, his strength also grew little by little until he reached his final chance. And this man named Minsok finally found a glimmer of hope. He discovered a base protected by soldiers. It even had a medical team from a university hospital caring for the survivors. In one of his past loops, Minsok had lived out the rest of his life there. So this time, he decided to take his daughter to that safe haven. At the very end, he stood before his daughter's grave and used his final chance. This time, he had reviewed all 99 failures and prepared for every possible outcome. But the sudden variable in this run appeared right at his front door. A zombie horde that shouldn't have been there. In all 99 previous loops, this had never happened once. So he naturally assumed this run would be the same. But now, the zombies were swarming toward them like a plague of locusts. His daughter's voice snapped him out of his daze. In that instant, Minsok shoved her back inside the house. Then he slammed the door shut. No matter how desperately she twisted the handle and screamed for him to open it, he only pressed his body against the door and held it shut with everything he had. The next second, the zombie horde lunged at him and tore into his body. But after dying 99 times, Minsok had long grown used to that agonizing pain, and the thought of his daughter being in danger again without him filled him with unbearable rage. He summoned an impossible willpower and forced himself back onto his feet. Even if he had to die 100 times or 1,000 times, he didn't care. As long as his daughter lived, he could never fall. In that moment, he spread his arms wide and blasted the zombies off his body. Another zombie rushed at him with a savage roar. He grabbed its head and ripped it clean off, then teleported forward and punched another zombie flying. When another zombie lunged in to bite him, he bit back even more brutally. Then he tore that zombie's head off as well. Right after that, he punched straight through another zombie's body. He leapt into the air, dropped from above, and smashed his fist into a zombie on the ground. The horde behind him suddenly froze. The icy pressure radiating from Minsok made them too terrified to move. He only glanced back, and that single look was enough to suppress every zombie there. At this point, if they dared to come any closer, they wouldn't even leave a corpse behind. Inside the door, his daughter had collapsed weakly to the floor. Minsok slowly opened the door. When he saw his daughter's eyes again, he knew the goddess had given him one more chance. This time, even if he was no longer human, he would protect his daughter until the very end. 7 days later, they arrived at Supermarket A in the XGM district. There, they found soldiers standing guard. The moment one soldier saw the suspicious man, he snapped. "With this many zombies nearby, how did you get here without a scratch? Answer me before I blow your head off." But when the soldier got a better look at the man's face, something felt off. The man was wearing sunglasses, and for a second, the soldier even thought he might be some kind of celebrity. Just then, a woman in combat gear walked over. She had black hair tied in a high ponytail and cold, razor-sharp eyes. She immediately told the two of them to get lost, saying there was no room here and they should go somewhere else. The moment their eyes met, she coldly ordered the man to leave again. But Minsok calmly turned around and started playing the pity card, saying his daughter had been wandering outside for days and her asthma had flared up again. "If you can't take me in, then at least take my daughter. Please, I'm begging you, save her." Cha Hae-ri froze for a moment. Then her expression instantly turned furious. The soldier beside her only made things worse by muttering, "You really think that sob story is going to work on our captain?" But in the very next second, tears streamed down Cha Hae-ri's face, and she immediately agreed to let them in. She even told her comrades not to misunderstand. She said they were simply short on manpower to protect the supermarket. The soldier beside her could only awkwardly remind her, "Captain, you should wipe your nose first." But once Cha Hae-ri made a decision, she wouldn't easily change it. After surviving 99 loops, Min-seok already knew Cha Hae-ri's personality inside and out. She was as calm as a venomous snake. Yet, for some reason, any story about a parent sacrificing themselves could move her almost instantly. His daughter, Yu Dami, was now sulking because of the tactic he had just used. The soldier told them to follow him. But suddenly, Yu Dami's head started spinning. Min-seok immediately let his daughter lean against his shoulder. He knew that if Dami didn't rest soon, things could become dangerous. After they went inside, Min-seok saw another new variable. Because this building had never appeared in the previous loops. The soldier told them that 3 days ago, zombies had surrounded this place. So he and Cha Hae-ri lured the zombies into the building next door. Then they detonated the explosives they had planted in advance, blasting the zombies to pieces. The soldier believed that even if the zombies hadn't died, they should have been buried under the rubble. But Min-seok's heart tightened as a strong sense of dread surged through him. The soldier, however, didn't take it seriously at all. Then, behind him, a giant zombie slowly stood up. The soldier sensed movement and turned around. What he saw was a massive, rotten, horrifying zombie with blood-red eyes and a violent aura. Before he could react, the giant zombie raised its fist high and smashed it down. Cha Hae-ri tried to find a chance to close in, but the zombie's fist was already aimed at her. Thankfully, she was quick enough to dodge that terrifying blow. Only then did the surrounding soldiers finally react. Cha Hae-ri stepped in front of Min-seok and Dami. Then she immediately ordered every soldier to open fire. Everyone pulled the trigger at once, concentrating their fire on the giant zombie. But the bullets had absolutely no effect on it. The giant zombie was enraged. It roared, charged at the soldiers, and threw a brutal punch. One soldier was still trembling on the ground, and the giant zombie raised both fists over its head, preparing to crush him. Right then, a backpack suddenly slammed into the monster. Cha Hae-ri used that moment to rescue the soldier instantly. Then, she shouted at him to get himself together. Only now did she realize that the monster this time was nothing like the ordinary zombies from 3 days ago. She turned her head and ordered Min-seok and the others to run back into the supermarket. Min-seok wanted to say something, but Cha Hae-ri had no time to listen and only yelled for him to run. Min-seok realized this couldn't go on. He had to do something, so he suddenly changed direction and charged straight toward the giant zombie. He clenched his fist as the veins in his arm bulged. Cha Hae-ri originally planned to lure the giant zombie toward the isolation barriers outside the supermarket, buy as much time as possible, and find its weakness. But she never expected there to still be people on the first floor. She thought everyone had already been evacuated, so now she had to come up with another plan. Cha Hae-ri immediately ordered 3 soldiers to go inside and evacuate the civilians, while she stayed behind to draw the zombies' attention. But when she saw Yu Dami, she realized her father was gone and thought Min-seok had abandoned his daughter and run away. Yu Dami pointed toward the giant zombie, and Cha Hae-ri followed the direction of her finger. There, she saw Min-seok tightening his fist and slamming it into the zombie lying on the ground. Right after that, he clenched his fist again and raised his arm high. Everyone was completely stunned. One father in the crowd even instinctively covered his child's eyes. Not long after, the giant zombie finally stopped moving. Only then did Min-seok slowly stand up, dust off his clothes, and apologize to Yu Dami in the crowd. He had failed to keep his promise to her. He was just scared, terrified that Dami might get hurt. The moment he finished speaking, the atmosphere fell silent. Cha Hae-ri stared at Min-seok with deep suspicion because what he had just done was clearly beyond human limits. She couldn't help but question what he really was. Min-seok pushed up his sunglasses and formally introduced himself, saying his name was Min-seok and that he was Dami's father. Yu Dami immediately became nervous, afraid that her father would reveal his zombie identity. But in the next second, Min-seok casually made up an identity as a zombie expert. Cha Hae-ri still looked doubtful. Min-seok continued explaining that after the zombies appeared, he had thoroughly analyzed their traits and weaknesses. He was glad he could be of help this time, and hoped they would take care of him from now on. So that was it. As if Cha Hae-ri would ever believe that. She drew her knife and held it against Min-seok, making the atmosphere instantly tense. After all, that giant zombie couldn't even be killed by bullets, yet Min-seok had beaten it down with his bare hands. On top of that, his eyes were blood red. Every sign pointed to one conclusion: Min-seok wasn't human. Min-seok had no choice but to keep explaining. He said guns could kill it, but the zombie had already been weakened by gunfire. and all he did was deliver the final blow. That giant zombie was a mutation formed by the fusion of two zombies. Its destructive power was terrifying, and its extreme defense was one of its main traits. Its weakness was the starting point of the fusion, which was its jaw. But it required the force of a hammer strike to kill it. As for his eyes, he claimed it was congenital melanin deficiency. The reason he wore sunglasses was because Cha Hae-ri's intense stare made him uncomfortable. Then he asked her, "Do you still think I'm a zombie?" Of course. Those excuses weren't enough to completely erase Cha Hae-ri's suspicion. But then she thought about it. What kind of zombie would risk its life to protect its own daughter? In the end, she agreed to let Min-suk continue following them. However, she would still keep a very close eye on him. Just then, two soldiers hurried over to check the situation. Cha Hae-ri immediately kicked one of them, because she had clearly told them before that if anything happened, they had to evacuate everyone to the underground parking lot immediately. The soldiers quickly explained that they had panicked, but Cha Hae-ri coldly warned them that if the zombie hadn't died, everyone in the supermarket would have been killed. If it happened again, she would kill them herself before the zombies ever got the chance. The soldiers immediately saluted Cha Hae-ri sharply, but the one who had been kicked was clearly starting to resent her. Meanwhile, inside the supermarket plaza, Yu Da-mi was still worried that her father's identity might be exposed. At the same time, she also felt like Min-suk somehow knew Cha Hae-ri. Min-suk told her that he simply judged from Cha Hae-ri's face that she wasn't a bad person. But the truth was, in a previous loop, he had fought alongside Cha Hae-ri as a teammate. Then Min-suk said he needed to step away for a bit to get some food. He told Da-mi to be a good girl and wait for him, reminding her that she absolutely couldn't tell anyone about the strange changes happening to him. Yu Da-mi was also afraid that if others learned the truth, they might hurt Min-suk, because if Min-suk's condition was exposed here, everyone would fall into panic. Not long after, Min-suk returned with a box of food and saw that his daughter had already fallen asleep. So he quietly walked over and gently pulled the blanket higher over her. The strange power that entered Min-suk's body a week ago felt so familiar that it made him uncomfortable, almost as if it had been inside him from the very beginning. But there was something else that bothered him even more. The zombies were evolving far too quickly. The 100 zombies that had gathered outside his home had mutated in just 1 week. In all 99 loops Min-suk had gone through, zombies had never evolved this fast. This run was already filled with unpredictable variables. What he couldn't understand was why the zombies were changing like this. Deep down, Min-suk had a faint feeling that it might have something to do with him. He could sense that the zombies were looking for him, trying to eliminate both him and Yu Da-mi. Min-suk didn't know whether they hated him or feared him, but one thing was certain. To the zombies, Min-suk was also a variable. So Min-suk went to an open area and deliberately lured the zombie horde toward him. That way he wouldn't have to hunt them down one by one. Right now, Min-suk could hardly wait to let loose. He snapped an A-frame ladder in half with his bare hands, because he had to finish making breakfast before his daughter woke up. The horde charged madly toward Min-suk at the center. He swung the ladder first, smashing it into a zombie's neck, and instantly separating its head from its body. Then he rushed straight in, causing a giant zombie to suddenly lose its balance. At that moment, another zombie bit into his arm and tore down hard. Min-suk stepped off another zombie for leverage, launched himself forward, and slammed the attacker to the ground with a flying strike. And the arm he had lost regenerated rapidly in the very next second. Min-suk's crimson eyes were cold and deep, burning with suppressed rage. Veins bulged across his arm as he punched a zombie's head, shattering the ground beneath it. Right after that, a centipede-like zombie raised its body high and sprayed blue-purple toxic gas downward, flooding the ground. Min-suk leapt into the air and struck from above. His attack pierced straight through the zombie's head. Then, he pulled out 2 axes. He slaughtered the surrounding zombies one after another. Blood exploded in midair, body fragments scattered everywhere, and Min-suk's eyes remained ice cold as he chased after the last zombie. That zombie stretched out several arms and attacked, but Min-suk stomped it into the ground. It thrashed wildly and roared in fury. Min-suk brought his axe down and sent its head flying, while his eyes remained filled with cold anger. The next morning, Yu Da-mi slowly opened her eyes. She sat up and stretched. Then she saw her father handing breakfast to her, and the plating was surprisingly delicate, with a heart shape made on top of the rice. Min-suk gestured for his daughter to hurry and eat. Yu Da-mi smiled, nodded, and softly hummed in agreement. Meanwhile, Cha Hae-ri received a report from a soldier, saying there had been noise outside from 1 to 5 in the morning, and every zombie in that area was dead. Cha Hae-ri could hardly believe it. Were the zombies actually killing each other? The soldier couldn't believe it either, but he had seen the result with his own eyes. Cha Hae-ri couldn't understand how that many zombies had been wiped out in just 4 hours. She looked at her contact list and quickly came up with an idea. Cha Hae-ri immediately ordered the soldier to gather everyone. From this moment on, Supermarket A would begin its escape plan. News that every zombie nearby had completely disappeared soon spread through the crowd, and everyone burst into cheers, shouting that they were safe. Yu Dami also heard about it. Min-suk placed a safety helmet on his daughter's head. Dami, listen carefully. No matter what happens later, you absolutely cannot take this helmet off. Understand? Yu Dami looked confused. A short while later, Cha Hae-ri walked over with a megaphone and officially announced that every zombie in the area had been eliminated. Once the people received confirmation, they became even more excited. But Cha Hae-ri still planned to lead everyone out of this place. The crowd couldn't understand it. If there were no zombies left, why did they still have to escape? 3 days ago, Cha Hae-ri had been in close contact with a certain military unit. The 2nd Mechanized Infantry Brigade was the only surviving brigade-level force in District G. Not only did it have large-scale mechanized equipment and brigade-level manpower, but it also allowed ordinary civilians to join its shelter. But after hearing that, the people clearly didn't believe it was true. Cha Hae-ri told everyone not to worry, saying she knew the person on the other end better than anyone, and they could fully trust him. But someone in the crowd immediately snapped back. Trust him? Are you serious? You want us to walk to our deaths just because of a few radio calls? Cha Hae-ri wanted to lead the people out, but the crowd stubbornly refused to leave. Someone even mocked her openly, saying they had expected this day to come. If the leader were a man, would he really make such a reckless decision? For a moment, Cha Hae-ri felt completely powerless. Just then, someone in the crowd warned them that the zombies would come back. But the man immediately sneered. Who do you think you are? Stop acting like some kind of prophet. Min-suk stepped in front of him and said coldly, if you stay here, you'll be nothing but sitting ducks. Can that even be called living? You're just waiting around to die. The man was shut down so hard that he was left completely speechless. Min-suk also admitted that he couldn't guarantee everyone would survive just by following the soldiers. But if you don't follow the military and don't rely on their protection, do you really think you have any chance of surviving? The voices in the crowd slowly died down, and some people began to agree with Cha Hae-ri, saying that only by following the soldiers would they have a chance to live. In the end, the people finally agreed to break out with Cha Hae-ri. Cha Hae-ri still couldn't understand how Min-suk had changed everyone's mind so quickly. Just who was this man? Min-suk told her there was no need to thank him. After all, his silver tongue had once been one of his specialties in the loops. Besides, he was doing this for himself and his daughter too. Then, Min-suk reached out his hand and said he was willing to believe that Cha Hae-ri could pull this off. Cha Hae-ri's confidence surged. She raised the megaphone and shouted, I, Cha Hae-ri, will get all of you out of here. And just like that, their escape began. 2 buses were protected in the middle, with military vehicles guarding the front and rear. Cha Hae-ri stayed up front, constantly watching their surroundings. The driver said it had been a long time since he had crossed the Han River, so it felt a little unfamiliar. Cha Hae-ri immediately told him to stay focused, because this had only just begun. Just then, the person in the passenger seat warned them that there were zombies ahead. Soon, more and more zombies began emerging from every direction. Cha Hae-ri immediately gave orders through the radio. If zombies appear, open fire at once. Team C, lead the convoy right. Left side unit, move now. Cha Hae-ri used the fact that zombies had sharper hearing than vision, and threw cans from the vehicle to draw them away. The plan worked, and the zombies' attention was successfully pulled aside. Cha Hae-ri told the driver to maintain the distance and not let them catch up. But more and more zombies kept appearing, and they were quickly closing in on the convoy. Cha Hae-ri immediately ordered the driver to head for Sungsun Bridge. Now, turn around. The truck drifted hard and came to a safe stop. Just then, a lightning-fast zombie slammed straight through the zombies blocking the way, sending many of them falling off the bridge. At that critical moment, Min-suk arrived in a road roller to support them. A road roller carried tens of tons of weight, making it a heavy machine capable of crushing almost anything. Min-suk had lured all the zombies ahead straight toward it. Even medium-sized zombies were knocked straight off the bridge by the roller, leaving Cha Hae-ri and the others completely stunned. Meanwhile, on the other bus, one thought had been weighing heavily on Yu Dami's heart. Before they got on the bus, Minsuk had insisted on going to help Cha Haeri's team, and Dami was worried the soldiers might discover his secret. Minsuk had told his daughter not to worry, saying he was only going to assist them and would never expose himself. Just then, someone shouted, "Cha Haeri's team is back," interrupting Dami's thoughts. Then she saw Minsuk driving the road roller back, with Cha Haeri's team behind him. Cha Haeri immediately ordered the convoy to follow behind the road roller, so any zombies that appeared ahead could be crushed straight through. And just like that, the convoy drove all the way to the 2nd Mechanized Infantry Brigade. There was an extremely powerful man stationed here. In the previous loops, he had led his troops and survived for a very long time, making this one of the key strongholds they had to pass through on their way to the destination. Reaching this place in only 8 days was progress Minsuk had never achieved before, but he still couldn't afford to let his guard down. If he acted recklessly, Dami could be put in danger. He wouldn't stray from the route that had already been proven in his past life. The soldiers gathered around Minsuk and cheered. Stunned that he could even drive a road roller, Minsuk simply said he had learned it before. After all, the more skills you had, the better your chances of survival. Cha Haeri even thanked him, which was rare for her. Minsuk deliberately pretended he didn't hear her and asked her to repeat it. Cha Haeri immediately changed her tune. Yeah, the second half of the ride was way too noisy, then turned away with an annoyed look. The soldiers on guard here had been waiting for Cha Haeri's arrival for quite some time. One soldier said they had received orders from the colonel. With Cha Haeri's ability, she was expected to arrive here today. But Cha Haeri barely knew that colonel at all. The soldier explained that the colonel had said a stubborn and extremely noisy female soldier would be coming here. Cha Haeri's face instantly darkened when she heard that. She was about to go confront that colonel on the spot, while the guard immediately returned to a serious expression. Meanwhile, beside the bus, Minsuk was still calming his daughter down. Just then, someone reported that zombies had appeared near the rear gate. Cha Haeri was startled, only to learn that the colonel had personally taken troops to deal with them. But the soldier quickly corrected himself. Not exactly. It was more like the colonel asked, "Do you think I've gotten old?" After a brief silence, the soldier continued and said the colonel had gone to the rear gate alone. The sentry checked his watch, then reported, "Colonel, 27 seconds, a new record." Colonel Cha Peng-ho sighed with satisfaction. As expected of the strongest man in the infantry brigade, that axe swing felt incredible. A soldier on the watchtower suggested using guns against the zombies, asking what he would do if he got bitten. Cha Peng-ho dismissed the concern. How could I possibly get bitten? For someone on his level, one glance was enough to see an enemy's combat strength. Besides, with your level of combat power, what help could you possibly be to me? What a joke. The two soldiers had no way to argue back. Cha Peng-ho walked forward while loosening his muscles, grumbling. Aside from these useless fools, couldn't the heavens drop me at least one capable person? Just then, the medium-sized zombie actually climbed back up, making Cha Peng-ho narrow his eyes in confusion. The next second, the zombie suddenly charged straight toward him. But before it could reach him, Minsuk drove the road roller over and crushed it flat. For a moment, no one even understood what had just happened. But Cha Peng-ho instantly became alert. He looked at Minsuk behind him, and with just one glance, he could see the man's combat strength. In the end, Minsuk's secret couldn't escape Cha Peng-ho's eyes. Before Minsuk could even finish introducing himself, Cha Peng-ho's eyes flashed with killing intent, and he swung his axe down with murderous force. Fortunately, Minsuk dodged the strike in time. The soldiers around them had no idea why Cha Peng-ho had suddenly attacked him. But when they looked more closely, they realized Minsuk had actually grabbed Cha Peng-ho's axe directly. Cha Peng-ho immediately ordered them to return and trigger the red defense alarm, because this guy was a monster. Minsuk slowly spoke. "Looks like I really can't fool your eyes, Colonel Cha Peng-ho." Cha Peng-ho hadn't even reacted yet. Otherwise, Minsuk might have been split in half right then and there. If Minsuk wanted to stay here, he first had to convince Cha Peng-ho. But words would never work on a man like him, so Minsuk had to use the method Cha Peng-ho liked best. He took his stance and showed the colonel exactly who he was through action. Cha Peng-ho narrowed his eyes and asked, "Are you trying to challenge me? Well, live long enough and you really do meet every kind of lunatic." As Cha Peng-ho said that, he began removing his protective gear. Then he casually threw it onto the ground. "How did you know that kind of big talk would be exactly what gets me interested?" The moment he finished speaking, Cha Peng-ho leapt first and attacked Minsuk. He was extremely curious to find out what kind of creature Minsuk really was. At the same time, The red alarm rang throughout the base. Everyone now had to be evacuated to the shelter. Cha Hae-ri was wondering what had happened, and the soldier behind her was just about to explain. But then, a captain stationed here walked over and pointed his gun straight at Cha Hae-ri. Cha Hae-ri immediately demanded to know what they were doing. The captain said the monster that attacked the brigade commander at the rear gate had mentioned Cha Hae-ri's name. Cha Hae-ri didn't understand what monster he was talking about until Cha Pung-ho spoke and said that man's name was Min-suk. Everyone looked confused after hearing that. But Yu Dami's eyes widened instantly. Meanwhile, Min-suk charged up and threw a punch. But Cha Pung-ho dodged it in time, and the wall behind him was smashed to pieces. Cha Pung-ho coldly asked, "After that, you still dare to say you're human?" Min-suk raised his arm and blocked Cha Pung-ho's kick. Then his body suddenly vanished from where he stood. In the next second, he reappeared right above Cha Pung-ho's head. Cha Pung-ho reacted instantly and backed away, while Min-suk swung his fist down. Right after that, Cha Pung-ho landed a punch on Min-suk. But then, he suddenly stopped. He grabbed Min-suk by the collar and said with a serious look, "Are you messing with me? You held back when you threw that punch. You were going easy on me." Cha Pung-ho was right. If Min-suk had used his full strength, Cha Pung-ho might have died on the spot. And Cha Pung-ho knew it too. From the moment he started fighting Min-suk, every cell in his body could feel the overwhelming difference between them. So Cha Pung-ho was certain that Min-suk had come to him for a reason. Min-suk didn't hide it. He said he needed Cha Pung-ho's protection. Cha Pung-ho burst out laughing and said, "A monster like you means protection?" But Min-suk answered quietly, "I'm not the one who needs protecting. It's you, Dami, my daughter. Please allow us, and the people who came with us, to stay here." After saying that, Min-suk dropped to his knees. If Cha Pung-ho agreed, Min-suk was willing to do anything for him. That night, the people in the shelter heard that Min-suk was a monster, and because of his blood-red eyes, many of them began suspecting that he might be a zombie. At that moment, Min-suk was bound in heavy iron chains and locked inside a prison cell. Before he was imprisoned, Cha Pung-ho had agreed to take in the people who came with him. As for Min-suk, this dangerous man had offered to be isolated. If they couldn't trust him, they could lock him up. No matter how long it took, Min-suk would prove that he wasn't dangerous. Just then, a shadow appeared outside the window. It was his daughter. "You, Dami?" Min-suk immediately asked. "Dami, are you okay?" Yu Dami said, of course she was okay. The alarm had been lifted, and she had been given permission to come out. Min-suk apologized to his daughter because once again, he had failed to keep their promise. But Yu Dami gently tapped Min-suk on the head. She said that if it hadn't been for Min-suk, everyone would never have reached this place safely. So please lift your head, because at the very least, your daughter will always believe in you. After hearing that, Min-suk finally smiled with relief. Yu Dami had to return before the 10 o'clock roll call, so their time together was over. She waved her hand and softly said, "Good night." But after running only a short distance away, Dami could no longer hold back her emotions. She stopped and quietly wiped away her tears. Min-suk silently lowered his head as well. Just then, a soldier called out to Min-suk and told him that Cha Pung-ho wanted to see him. Cha Pung-ho pointed to a location on the map and said that 20 minutes ago, through an acoustic detector, he had discovered signals from a large number of survivors inside Bupabal Station. At the same time, they had also detected an unknown and abnormal frequency. The core of Cha Pung-ho's plan was rapid mobility, sending elite personnel in for the rescue. As he spoke, Cha Pung-ho pointed to himself first, then pointed at Min-suk. He brought up the promise Min-suk had made earlier. Min-suk snapped the chains apart with a sharp crack. Then he raised his head and asked, "When do we leave?" "Right now." The Gupabal Station rescue operation officially began. Meanwhile, the subway entrance in the southern area had collapsed and was completely blocked, forcing the survivors to sit together against the walls on both sides. A child softly called out, "Dad." The person beside them was clearly irritated by the noise. An older woman told the man not to be so petty. But then, the child suddenly noticed something on the ceiling and raised a small hand while calling for his mother. His mother felt a wave of unease and slowly looked up, only to faintly see half of a pale face. The next second, that face's eyes suddenly glowed crimson, its expression twisted with madness, and its mouth filled with sharp teeth. In reality, zombies had already surrounded them. At the critical moment, a blinding beam of light suddenly rushed in and sent the zombie flying. Cha Pung-ho looked smug and asked, "Isn't this vehicle even better than the road roller?" Min-sek nodded. The road roller had terrifying impact power, but its mobility was far too poor. This operation had two major variables. The first was that the subway entrance had been blocked. The second was that, according to the map on Cha Pung-ho's tablet, an unidentified entity was trapped in the same sealed space as the survivors, so they had to reach them as fast as possible. Cha Pung-ho pointed to another spot on the tablet, saying the ventilation opening there was large and the survivors were still in relatively decent condition. Cha Pung-ho's plan was to quickly rescue the survivors through the ventilation ducts, and he was determined to save every single one of them. But Min-suk rejected the plan first, then slowly said that the operation would fail. Cha Pung-ho didn't understand what Min-suk meant, so Min-suk told him that although the timing was different, the same event always happened every time. You always come up with the best plan. But up until now, you've never managed to save even one person. At that moment, one survivor slowly regained consciousness. Before she could understand what was happening, she realized she was hanging upside down. She immediately thrashed around and cried out for her child. After finally breaking free from the spiderweb-like restraints, she fell hard to the ground. Ignoring the pain, she quickly looked around, searching for any sign of her child. The man hanging nearby also started shouting, telling her to hurry up and get him down. She asked if he had seen her child, but the man had only just woken up too, and impatiently yelled at her to stop standing there and save him first. Just then, the older woman crawled toward them in a disturbing posture, making the man look at her in shock. Her eyes were glowing crimson, her face twisted into something horrifying, and she had completely turned into a monster. The next second, she opened her mouth and bit down hard on the man's head. Before anyone could understand what had just happened, the man's body dropped from above, but in the next second, he stood back up in a twisted posture. Even with half his head missing, he could still move, leaving everyone frozen in place. Only when he staggered right up to them did they finally realize he had become a zombie. And this kind of zombie could swallow an adult's head in a single bite. Everyone immediately started running, unable to understand why zombies were inside this place. As the woman ran, she suddenly heard a child calling for his father. She followed the voice to the railway entrance and rushed down without thinking. The young man couldn't stop her no matter how hard he shouted. The young man's father immediately told him to follow her, but the scene ahead made the young man's face turn pale with shock. Because there were zombies in front of them too, the woman kept running downward, convinced that her child was just ahead. But what she saw was a massive figure, a zombie holding a headless corpse in its hand. The woman froze in place, and the zombie displayed a terrifying monster-like presence right in front of her. She could only pray in her heart that all of this was fake, that it was just a dream. But in the next second, the zombie grabbed her and prepared to shove her into its mouth. Right then, a vehicle engulfed in flames suddenly charged in and smashed straight through the area. The explosion triggered a violent burst of fire, and the flames dealt devastating damage to the zombie. The woman stared at the scene in front of her, overwhelmed by a storm of emotions. In the previous loops, Cha Pung-ho had tried every method he could think of, but he had never managed to save a single person. Min-suk's point was clear. Human methods wouldn't work here. Only something beyond human could change this outcome. The creature in front of them was a skinwalker, a high-level spider-type zombie that could knock humans unconscious, hunt them down, and imitate human appearances. The zombie attacked first, spitting spider silk straight at Min-suk. This zombie was extremely similar to a spider, which meant it was vulnerable to high heat. Min-suk seized the opening in its attack and knocked it down. Since fire was its weakness, Min-suk unleashed flaming punches and hammered its body again and again. But even as it screamed, the zombie was still mimicking a human voice calling out, "Dad." Min-suk pinned it down with flames, giving it no chance to fight back, then delivered a fatal strike. But at that moment, someone suddenly threw a stone at Min-suk. The woman broke down and shouted, "Stop! Don't hurt my child." Min-suk was distracted for just a moment, and that gave the zombie a chance to counterattack. The zombie caught him off guard and blasted Min-suk away. The woman was also knocked to the ground by the violent tremor. Min-suk staggered and braced one hand against the ground, barely steadying himself. As the zombie continued roaring, it had already moved above Min-suk, and the ground around them began cracking apart. At that moment, Min-suk remembered his daughter saying that she would always believe in him. He had to lift his head. No matter how difficult things became, Min-suk could never give up. The zombie tried to attack again. But in the next second, Min-suk punched it straight in the jaw, sending its head snapping upward toward the sky. Even then, it continued mimicking a human voice, crying out, "Dad." Min-suk followed with a flying kick that pinned the zombie by the neck. The zombie flipped over and vomited something disgusting all over the ground. Now that was the zombie's real voice. That disgusting, twisted wail was the sound a zombie was supposed to make. Min-suk coldly declared that from now on, the only sound zombies were allowed to make was screaming. And with the zombie's final shriek, Min-suk finally ended the battle. Meanwhile, the zombies were about to break through the main door, but the survivors desperately held it shut together. If the zombies forced that door open, not a single survivor inside would remain alive. But as they pushed against the door with everything they had, thick smoke suddenly began drifting through the area. Someone shouted in panic, "The place is on fire. We're all going to die here." Another survivor immediately snapped at him, "Shut your damn mouth." But the people blocking the door soon realized that there was no sound outside at all. Right after that, both sides of the door began to loosen. Everyone was instantly terrified. But whatever was outside didn't seem to be a zombie. They stared at the man in confusion, unable to understand who he was. Soon, Min-suk brought the survivors back to Cha Pung-ho's troops. The total number of rescued survivors was 37. In a completely sealed space, where there was almost no way to avoid the zombies, he had rescued nearly 40 trapped people. It was nothing short of a miracle. And Yu Dami's father, Min-suk, was cheered by the crowd as the hero who had created that miracle. He simply gave the people a small wave. The soldier beside Cha Hae-ri couldn't stop praising Min-suk either. Cha Pung-ho then announced that Min-suk had passed the test with a perfect score. Everyone began cheering for Min-suk again. Yu Dami walked over and hugged Min-suk tightly, because even if Min-suk was a monster, he could still be a hero. Not long after the mission ended, a soldier returned to the base infirmary to deliver medicine to a patient. He told the patient to rest for now and said he would bring the medicine back shortly, then closed the door. But he failed to notice the mosquito bite-like swelling on his neck. And that was the beginning of the infection. Meanwhile, everyone else was still caught up in the joy of celebrating Min-suk's success, and the base was filled with laughter and cheers. Cha Pung-ho said that from the first time he saw Min-suk, he knew this man was capable of great things. He just never expected Min-suk to do this well, and he would probably have to rely on him even more from now on. On a day like this, they should have been drinking until dawn, but they still had to hold back a little. Cha Pung-ho also thought about those who had left as hell before them, worried they might feel sorrow. So he held out a beer and raised a toast to those who have already left this hell, and to us who kept surviving until the end. Then the two of them clinked their drinks. But there was something Min-suk couldn't understand. He asked why Cha Pung-ho never asked how he knew the operation would fail, or why he had become a monster. Was he really not curious at all? Cha Pung-ho said his instincts had always been accurate, and he wasn't interested in Min-suk's story. In this hell, the one who kept risking everything to save others had always been Min-suk. So from now on, they were family. Cha Pung-ho really hadn't changed at all from the previous loops. However, Cha Pung-ho did have one question. Min-suk had said his destination was D-City, but with Min-suk's strength, if he had left earlier, he should have arrived there by now. Min-suk explained that there was still something he had to finish here. He remembered that whenever he rushed into action in the past, the results usually turned out badly. Cha Pung-ho roughly guessed that it had something to do with Min-suk's daughter. When Min-suk asked how he knew, Cha Pung-ho said he could tell with one look, because in this world, the closest and most troublesome people were always your children. Only then did Min-suk realize that Cha Hae-ri hadn't come. Cha Pung-ho took a deep drink. Then he waved his hand and told someone to bring more beer. Just then, Yu Dami came to find Min-suk. She said she was a little tired and wanted to go back first. Min-suk was worried, so he decided to walk his daughter back. After saying goodbye to Cha Pung-ho, he left with her. Cha Pung-ho watched the father and daughter walk away. Then he quietly said, "Seeing that expression on Min-suk's face proves one thing. Fathers really are all the same." Min-suk wanted to go to D-City, but Cha Pung-ho probably couldn't let him leave so easily. Cha Pung-ho felt sorry about it, because with Min-suk here, the plan he had once been forced to stop could finally be restarted. Just then, Cha Pung-ho thought the soldier was coming over with more beer. But the soldier clutched his neck and stammered, "Commander, something happened." Meanwhile, Min-suk suddenly remembered what Cha Pung-ho had said earlier. In this world, the closest and most troublesome people were always your children. So, Min-suk suddenly called out to Yu Dami and said there was something he wanted to ask her. "I'm a zombie. Are you really not afraid of me, Dami?" Yu Dami said that even if Min-suk looked different from before, she would still see him as her father without hesitation. Min-suk asked again, "Are you really not afraid of Dad?" But she answered, "Of course I'm afraid." Min-suk's eyes widened instantly. What Yu Dami feared was that one day, Min-suk might attack her too. But she was too tired now. She didn't want to keep pretending anymore. She looked up and questioned Min-suk. "Where is my real dad? You damned monster." Just then, Min-suk was snapped awake by his daughter calling him Dad. And only then did he realize everything that had just happened was only his imagination. Yu Dami looked at him in confusion and asked, "What are you thinking so hard about?" After a long silence, Min-suk finally said, "It's nothing." He was worried that something might be wrong after his daughter coughed, so he told Dami to go inside first. Then he prepared to get her medicine. But at that moment, a sudden chill surged through Min-suk. He abruptly called out to Dami, then reached his hand toward her. Dami was so frightened that she immediately shut her eyes. But Min-suk only clenched his fist tightly. Dami had no idea what her father was doing. When Min-suk opened his hand, there was a strange mosquito inside, and it was much larger than an ordinary one. The next second, the broadcast suddenly sounded a black alert, ordering everyone to take shelter immediately. Meanwhile, on Cha Pum-ho's side, a soldier who had been speaking to his superior just a second ago suddenly began convulsing and twisting, transforming into a horrifying zombie. Only then did Cha Pum-ho remember what Min-suk had told him before. The zombies were constantly evolving. They were becoming smarter, more cunning, and stronger, and the danger they posed to humanity would never stop. Cha Pum-ho grabbed the zombie by the throat. After all, he could bench press 230 kilograms, and his combat power was terrifying. He grabbed the zombie's head and ripped it clean off. The reason Min-suk had come here was exactly because Cha Pum-ho was here. Cha Pum-ho couldn't understand why zombies had appeared inside the base, so he immediately ordered his men to evacuate everyone to the shelter. When he saw them still standing there in shock, he roared, "Move! Do you all want to die?" Only then did everyone finally react and begin evacuating at once. Cha Pum-ho couldn't figure out how the virus had infiltrated the base. Then he noticed the wound on the zombie's neck. But before he could understand what was going on, a new wave of zombies charged toward him. Cha Pum-ho first sent a zombie flying with a kick. Then he grabbed a wooden stick nearby. The next second, he smashed it down with brutal force. He ordered one person behind him to get his gear and another to bring Min-suk here. Cha Pum-ho told them to move fast. "I'll hold the line here." He tightened his grip around the wooden stick. Then he swung upward and smashed a zombie head-on. This was Cha Pum-ho's territory, the kingdom he had built with his own hands. He drove the wooden stick straight into a zombie's throat. Then, he lifted it up and hurled it away. Just then, another zombie suddenly appeared behind him, so Cha Pum-ho shoved the wooden stick straight into its mouth. But in the next moment, yet another zombie lunged from behind. Cha Pum-ho clenched his teeth and let out a furious roar. Meanwhile, Min-suk placed a safety helmet on his daughter's head. This time, he would not allow her to take it off. Yu Dami felt the protection was way too exaggerated, so she asked Min-suk, "What kind of zombie are we dealing with this time?" Min-suk explained that Moski was a mosquito-shaped ultra-small zombie. Once someone was bitten by it, they would eventually turn into a zombie. Min-suk had only seen this mutated type once in his past life, but that was no excuse for him to run away. If Yu Dami was killed because of it, then everything Min-suk had done would be for nothing. He knew Moski's subsidiary bodies would keep appearing, so he had to find the main body. Cha Hae-ri had also heard that mosquitoes were the source of the virus transmission. Minimizing exposed skin as much as possible was the advice Min-suk had given. Cha Hae-ri froze for a moment, then remembered what had happened between Min-suk and Cha Pum-ho. She clicked her tongue in annoyance. Even so, she immediately ordered everyone to cover their skin tightly and begin moving. The soldier beside her realized the brigade commander wasn't concerned about this at all, and for a moment, he had no idea what to say. Just then, someone standing on the wall spotted a zombie outside the base, and it looked extremely strange. After describing the zombie, he turned back to confirm the target again. Not far away, he saw a toad-type zombie crouching there. It was far larger than an ordinary toad, and its eyes were crimson red. The next second, it suddenly opened a massive mouth, even larger than its own body. From inside, it released a swarm of huge brass-colored mosquitoes. He immediately reported what he saw to Chahiri. Chahiri was shocked as well. The swarm of mosquitoes multiplied explosively, rising into the sky in a dense black cloud. Everyone who saw it was terrified. Chahiri immediately ordered them, "Run, get back inside the building." But then, she suddenly saw Minseok launch himself into the air and fly into the sky, leaving her stunned by his movement. Before this, someone had come to ask Minseok for support, but unexpectedly, he had refused to go. Minseok said, "I'm just an ordinary person, and you're the soldiers." At that moment, Udami placed the safety helmet on his head herself. She told Minseok not to worry, because the mosquitoes couldn't bite her. Dami wanted everyone here to survive, but there was nothing she could do herself. So Udami reached out her hand and said, "But Dad can do it." Minseok accepted his daughter's request. This time, he would not only save Udami, he would save everyone. Minseok prepared a flamethrower. Next, he had to wipe out every mosquito. Minseok arrived just in time and used the flamethrower to burn down a massive number of mosquitoes. The toad-type zombie stared straight at Minseok. Minseok also spotted the toad-type zombie. After they stared each other down for a moment, the toad-type zombie lowered its body to charge up, then sprang backward, leaping nearly 20 meters into the air. Its intention was obvious. Minseok knew this thing planned to release the mosquitoes and run. When he saw Chahiri below, he jumped down without hesitation. Then he landed precisely inside the vehicle. Chahiri immediately asked, "Is that the monster that threw our base into chaos?" And she believed that Minseok would have a way to deal with it this time too. Minseok did have a way. Chahiri told him to deal with the toad-type zombie first, then prepare himself mentally, because she had a lot of questions for him. If he tried to fool her with more lies, Chahiri would never let him off. After hearing that, Minseok simply nodded. Chahiri slammed the gas pedal down and continued forward at full speed. The toad-type zombie escaped into a dark, remote cave, while Slither was a high-level mutated zombie capable of multiplying and copying subsidiary bodies. The moment the toad-type zombie entered, it began croaking loudly, as if greeting someone. The next thing that appeared before them was 5 glowing red eyes and a row of teeth arranged like stones. Slither smiled and responded to the toad-type zombie. The toad-type zombie hopped around as if it were reporting its achievement to Slither. A host-type mutated zombie, like Slither, usually hid its main body in the darkness, making it extremely difficult to find. But Minseok teleported straight inside and grabbed the toad-type zombie in one hand. That was why the best way to deal with it was a surprise attack. Right after that, Minseok used his strength and slammed the toad-type zombie into the ground, cracking the floor as a swarm of mosquitoes burst out of its mouth. The mosquitoes flew toward the light, only to be burned into charcoal by a burst of fire. It turned out Chahiri had already been waiting at the cave entrance, holding a flamethrower. Before this, Chahiri had already expected that someone would need to handle the cleanup. She told Minseok, "The base has been secured and both the civilians and Udami are safe. Even if another problem occurred, the base could quickly restore order." That kind of strong leadership was exactly why Minseok had come to Cha Peng-ho's unit. Minseok thanked her for telling him. But the reason this incident was suppressed so quickly was also because Minseok had proposed the correct emergency response. Minseok interrupted Chahiri and said, "This isn't over yet. If we don't kill the host behind the toad-type zombie, the base will be in danger again." Chahiri realized they had to eliminate that thing first. The key was not giving Slither any opening at all. Minseok suddenly fell silent for a moment, then slowly said, "This alone isn't enough." Slither's greatest trait was excessive proliferation. Its subsidiary bodies would keep multiplying, and their numbers could become impossible to estimate. They shared an interconnected symbiotic relationship. As long as even one subsidiary body survived, the host could regenerate. Chahiri asked Minseok, "Does that mean there's no way to solve it?" But this time, she still believed Minseok would have a solution. And yes, Minseok did have one. He slammed his fist into the wall. The cave entrance collapsed, sealing the opening completely. The method to trap Slither and its subsidiary bodies while stopping their proliferation was actually simple. Lock Slither inside and keep killing it until it could no longer multiply. Thinking about the chaos Slither had caused and the threat it had posed to Udami, Minseok remembered the request he had promised his daughter. Killing Slither just once would never be enough to calm Min-seok's rage. At that moment, the battle erupted completely. Outside the cave, Cha Hae-ri stared at the sealed entrance, unable to understand what Min-seok was trying to do. Not long ago, she had received a message from Cha Pung-ho, saying he intended to recruit Min-seok as support. Cha Pung-ho had even said that Min-seok was not only the answer for their base, but the answer for humanity itself. Just then, a voice came through the radio. "Captain Cha, respond if you copy." Only when the second call came did Cha Hae-ri snap back to her senses. Whatever came through the radio didn't seem to be good news. Cha Hae-ri immediately demanded to know what had happened. Min-seok kept fighting until the sun was nearly setting the next day, and only then did he finally crawl out of the cave. The entire process took 18 hours and 27 minutes. Slither had multiplied into approximately 7.13 million subsidiary bodies, and every single one of those proliferated bodies was completely destroyed by a transcendent. Min-seok's bones were twisted and deformed all over. But with a series of sharp cracks, he twisted them all back into place. The Black Alert operation was over. That night, Cha Hae-ri was deeply shocked, thinking something had happened to Cha Pung-ho. But Cha Pung-ho was casually eating snacks with a confused look on his face, asking her, "What?" When Cha Hae-ri saw that look on Cha Pung-ho's face, she almost thought she was seeing a ghost. After all, the radio had just told her that Cha Pung-ho was in danger. But Cha Pung-ho looked completely unimpressed and mocked Cha Hae-ri instead, calling her a nervous little brat. Yesterday, she had been yelling at him because he wouldn't listen to her. And today, she was already worried that he might die. "So you were worried about me after all?" It turned out Cha Pung-ho had wiped out every zombie in the plaza with his bare hands, allowing all the civilians to evacuate safely to the shelter. Although Cha Pung-ho had taken a few minor injuries at the time, Cha Hae-ri still stubbornly said, "Only an idiot would worry about a monster-like old man like you." Cha Pung-ho immediately shot back. A little brat dares to speak to her superior like that? Only then did Cha Pung-ho realize Min-seok wasn't there. So he asked Cha Hae-ri where Min-seok had gone. Had the toad-type zombie and its main body been dealt with? Cha Hae-ri fell silent for a moment, then said that Cha Pung-ho had once called Min-seok the answer for humanity. Now, she felt like she was finally starting to understand what he meant. Everyone waited for Min-seok to return in triumph, and Cha Pung-ho waved at him from a distance. What humans couldn't do, Min-seok had found a way to do. And because of that, Cha Hae-ri began to see Min-seok in a new light. One morning, Cha Hae-ri started wondering how she should thank Min-seok. She practiced several ways to start a conversation, but every one of them felt awkward. Cha Hae-ri, who was usually cold and proud, was terrible at this kind of thing, so she was struggling to figure out how to approach him naturally. But when the two noticed her, she immediately acted tough and muttered, "What he's doing is none of my business." Min-seok didn't even look at her, which made it clear he still held a grudge. Cha Hae-ri thought about giving up. After all, Min-seok had lied to her before. But then again, she should at least say hello. Min-seok really had saved the entire base. Just then, she saw Min-seok and Cha Pung-ho seemingly talking about something. If there were 3 people there, it probably wouldn't be as awkward, so she planned to hand Min-seok the drink and leave right away. Cha Hae-ri secretly peeked over, only to hear Cha Pung-ho ask, "What did you just say?" Min-seok replied, "I meant exactly what I said. Tonight, Udami and I are leaving this place." Cha Hae-ri quietly watched from the side. Cha Pung-ho adjusted his breathing. Then he asked, "Why are you leaving in such a hurry? Are you heading to D City?" Cha Pung-ho considered that if a zombie even more dangerous than Slither appeared, everyone in the base would die. So he asked Min-seok to stay a little longer, at least until Cha Pung-ho's base became strong enough to stand on its own. But Min-seok asked in return, "Why? Why should I go that far for this base? Whether the people here live or die has nothing to do with me." After hearing that, Cha Hae-ri could no longer hold back and rushed out. She demanded, "Are you serious?" Min-seok simply said, "I am. The only person I care about is you, Udami. As for what happens to everyone else, that has nothing to do with me." Cha Hae-ri clenched her lips in anger and turned away. She smashed the drink she had prepared for Min-seok onto the ground. She reminded herself to wake up and stop expecting anything from a monster like Min-seok. But Min-seok knew very well that when he chose the supermarket A route, things like this sometimes happened. As Cha Hae-ri spent more time fighting side by side with Min-seok, she gradually began developing feelings for him. Cha Hae-ri felt like she must have lost her mind. So before things developed any further, Min-seok had to tear those feelings out by the roots. Only then would Cha Haeri truly be safe. Cha Peng-ho told Min-sok to think carefully and not reject the idea so coldly. At the very least, he should calm down and consider it properly. Cha Peng-ho questioned him again. Was D-City really absolutely safe? He planned to work with Min-sok to turn their base into the strongest shelter possible. Min-sok admitted it was a good proposal, but with their current strength, they still couldn't make it happen. Because they were already out of time. In the previous loop, Slither had appeared in the 10th year. But this time, it appeared in just 10 days. If other high-level zombies appeared at the same speed, this place would become ruins before it ever had the chance to grow stronger. So Min-sok had already decided that he would take Udami to D-City today. Before leaving, he would wipe out every zombie in the surrounding area. Min-sok touched the familiar road roller. He was going to crush every zombie nearby into the ground. Min-sok was absolutely determined to take Udami to D-City today. However, he still had one proposal. Colonel Cha, aren't you curious too? After all, your dream is to build the perfect shelter. So please come with me and witness the fate of that shelter with your own eyes. And with that, the D-City expedition officially set out. A candle in the wind. 2 weeks ago, they were like candles flickering in the wind. They had lost their loved ones, families, friends, and every last trace of hope and joy. That was when he appeared before them. His name was Baek Do-hyun. He leapt down from a high tower and landed firmly at the center of the stage. The crowd below instantly erupted with excitement, shouting, "Baek Do-hyun is here." Baek Do-hyun was now the one controlling D-City, and he had even become the mayor of D-City. Then he began brainwashing the audience below. He told them, "We are facing an unprecedented crisis. And this is not only our crisis, but a crisis shared by all of humanity." But they had survived. My dear citizens, was it really just coincidence that we survived? No, it was not. It is because we are the last spark here, the hope that has been reignited. The crowd erupted again, as if every citizen had survived only because of Baek Do-hyun. Baek Do-hyun promised everyone that he would never let this final spark go out, even if he had to burn himself to keep it alive. He would protect this brilliant city until the very end. The crowd below was completely swept into fanatic excitement. Min-sok and the others stood aside, watching the crazed scene unfold before them. Cha Peng-ho couldn't help questioning it. Is this really the D-City you talked about? But that wasn't the case. Even Min-sok was seeing this version of D-City for the first time, along with this strange man named Baek Do-hyun. In the previous loop, it had clearly been the Blue Hawk unit that rebuilt D-City. So why had the Blue Hawk unit now been reduced to what looked like simple assistance? More importantly, Min-sok didn't see the heroic leader of the Blue Hawk unit. Where had Shin Ji-woo gone? New questions immediately rose in Min-seok's mind. What kind of variable had occurred in D-City? And who exactly was Baek Do-hyun? Just then, Baek Do-hyun continued speaking, saying, "There is one more thing worth celebrating today. Our goddess has sent new companions to this city. These are the ones. Please welcome them warmly." At that moment, a smoke grenade suddenly flew over. The next second, a thick cloud of smoke exploded in front of Baek Do-hyun. Everyone immediately bent down and covered their mouths and noses. Min-sok, worried about Udami, while wondering who had thrown the smoke grenade. As the smoke slowly scattered, they saw Baek Do-hyun coughing violently. Then a person wearing a gas mask suddenly appeared. The figure pressed a gun directly against Baek Do-hyun's head and pulled the trigger. The citizens were instantly thrown into shock and panic. Baek Do-hyun was shot and collapsed to the ground. Baek Do-hyun's soldiers immediately rushed forward and pinned down the person wearing the gas mask. But when they removed the mask, they discovered that the attacker was actually Shin Ji-woo. The moment Min-sok heard Shin Ji-woo's name, his expression changed. So that man was Shin Ji-woo. Shin Ji-woo shouted, "Citizens, it's over now. Please, come to your senses. Don't you realize you've been deceived by Baek Do-hyun this whole time? It's time for all of you to wake up." But the truly terrifying part was that Baek Do-hyun stood back up as if nothing had happened. The citizens were shocked when they saw this. But they were not frightened. Instead, they erupted with joy, shouting that Baek Do-hyun had come back to life. Shin Ji-woo gritted his teeth and roared, "Baek Do-hyun, you monster." But Baek Do-hyun calmly said, "Today is truly a meaningful day, because that wicked demon tried to assassinate me today." Then he raised his right fist and declared, "The day to execute the demon has finally arrived." But the citizens had already been completely brainwashed by him. and they even cursed Shinji Wu as the real demon. They shouted wildly, "Do you really think our Mayor Baek could be defeated by a demon like you? Execute that demon immediately." Baek Do-hyun merely raised one hand, and the entire crowd instantly fell silent. He spoke gently, saying, "My dear citizens, thank you. The reason I could rise again before death is because all of you are with me. You are the true city of miracles." The citizens fell into complete fanaticism, as if the goddess had descended into their hearts and reignited the dying spark. This shining chapter of history would be opened by the people themselves. The final spark will never go out. D City will live forever. The city of miracles. The audience below erupted with excitement once again. Minseok and the others watched this insane scene in shock. But deep inside Minseok, one question had always remained. And now, the truth was finally beginning to surface. After experiencing that strange event, was Minseok really the only one who had turned into something completely different from before? The source of the unease he felt when he saw D City, and everything he had experienced so far, began fitting together like the outline of a complicated puzzle. At last, the truth was placed right in front of him. Baek Do-hyun was a zombie, just like Minseok. That night, Cha Pung-ho's subordinates urged them to return to the base, saying this place felt extremely strange. The infrastructure was excellent, but the people here weren't normal. One of them specifically pointed out that Baek Do-hyun, that blindfolded lunatic, was the strangest of all. He believed the shooting during the day had been staged, and it made him sick to watch. He also thought the intruder had been arranged in advance, because he had seen the scene with his own eyes at the time. That Baek Do-hyun guy was still smiling even after being shot. It was a textbook performance. No one knew what kind of show they would put on at tomorrow's execution ceremony, so it would be better not to get involved. The soldier beside him agreed, saying that if they stayed here any longer, they would only get dragged into trouble. Cha Pung-ho told them to wait outside because he needed to speak with Minseok alone. The two men didn't dare disobey the colonel's order, so they quietly stepped out. While Udami felt a faint sense of unease, Minseok nodded to his daughter, signaling that she didn't need to worry. Then he sat down across from Cha Pung-ho. Cha Pung-ho got straight to the point and asked, "Tell me first, is Baek Do-hyun a monster like you?" Minseok calmly replied, "So you noticed it too?" In truth, Cha Pung-ho had been able to tell at a glance that Baek Do-hyun, just like Minseok, didn't seem human at all. For a moment, he had even suspected that Minseok and Baek Do-hyun were working together to deceive him. Minseok immediately denied that guess. If that were true, Udami would be in even greater danger. To Baek Do-hyun, Minseok was also a variable. Cha Pung-ho said he understood, then asked if they could reach a conclusion now. Cha Pung-ho planned to take them back to the base. He trusted his base to be sturdy, but after being away for too long, he still couldn't feel completely at ease. D City's infrastructure was certainly tempting, but his dream was to restore the entire country, and this place was more suitable than anywhere else to become humanity's forward base for reconstruction. But the D City before them was already completely swallowed by fanaticism. It was basically beyond saving. Just like his subordinate had said, staying here any longer would only drag them into trouble, so they should return now. The moment he finished speaking, Minseok agreed. The next morning, Minseok arrived at the gate of Saber Tower. The guards quickly noticed him. Minseok briefly introduced himself and said he had come to visit Baek Do-hyun. But the guard apologized and told him that Baek Do-hyun wasn't accepting visitors. So Minseok asked, "Then can you deliver a message for me? Once he hears it, he'll definitely want to see me." Soon, Baek Do-hyun's voice rang out. "Citizen Minseok, what do you want to say to me?" Minseok calmly replied, "You should have already heard it, right? That's exactly why you're letting me in, isn't it?" Last night, Minseok had told Cha Pung-ho that Baek Do-hyun would never let them leave easily, because this place was essentially one giant cult. In other words, they would strongly resist outsiders leaving this place. Minseok knew very well how insane a cult like this could become under extreme circumstances. If things reached that point, they could be badly injured or even lose their lives. And if Baek Do-hyun was the same kind of being as him, then Baek Do-hyun would definitely feel uneasy too. Cha Pung-ho grew impatient and told Minseok to get to the point. What exactly was the plan? Minseok's plan was to reveal his true identity to Baek Do-hyun. Cha Pung-ho couldn't understand how that was supposed to be a strategy, but Minseok had prepared a special introduction, one that would make Baek Do-hyun suspicious while keeping him from acting recklessly. After all, in a place like D City, this town wasn't big enough for the two of them. Baek Do-hyun spoke again. Citizen Minsok, I'll give you one more chance. Explain yourself. Minsok calmly said, I'm the same as you. I'm someone chosen by the goddess. Baek Do-hyun narrowed his eyes. So you're saying you're an agent of the goddess, just like me. Baek Do-hyun. Minsok slowly raised his head, his crimson eyes faintly glowing, and confirmed it. At that moment, Baek Do-hyun finally began to feel uneasy. He muttered, I see. In the next second, he instantly slammed Minsok to the ground. What the hell do you think you are? Daring to compare yourself to me? Come on, let me see for myself. Are you truly someone chosen by the goddess? Or just a cunning demon wrapped in lies? Baek Do-hyun loved the feeling of standing above everyone while the masses bowed beneath him. But this time, he smelled something that made him deeply uncomfortable. And it was the first time he had ever smelled it. Baek Do-hyun followed that scent and quickly walked toward Minsok. He coldly asked Minsok, what is your name? As Minsok stood before him, the unpleasant scent that irritated Baek Do-hyun became even stronger. The scent that had annoyed him yesterday hadn't faded, and today it was even more pungent. Yet Minsok was openly provoking him right to his face. Baek Do-hyun had originally planned to summon them today and question them properly, but Minsok had come to provoke him first. What the hell do you think you are, daring to compare yourself to me? Let me see whether you are truly chosen by the goddess, or just a sinister demon. The moment he finished speaking, Minsok broke free from Baek Do-hyun's suppression. His finger joints were twisted in different directions, but Minsok still stood straight, not far away, giving off that heavy, pungent scent that made Baek Do-hyun deeply uncomfortable. To Baek Do-hyun, this was clearly another provocation. With several sharp cracks, Minsok's fingers quickly returned to normal. Baek Do-hyun couldn't tolerate it any longer and immediately rushed forward to suppress Minsok again. The two of them began fighting on the spot. Just then, Baek Do-hyun's most loyal deputy mayor rushed over. Because the commotion inside was too loud, he had to check the situation, so he yelled at the two guards to open the door. If anything happens to the mayor, can you take responsibility? But the guards said Baek Do-hyun had personally ordered that no one was allowed inside, no matter who it was. Still, the deputy mayor was far too loyal to Baek Do-hyun. Inside the room, the battle was fierce. Neither side was willing to yield, and they were locked in a brutal fight. During the fight, Minsok first lost one arm, then the other was torn off as well. Then both of them were blasted apart by each other's force. Baek Do-hyun braced himself against the floor and slid several meters back. Then he stood up again. He had to admit that Minsok wasn't just some guy who only knew how to run his mouth, because Minsok could regrow both arms in an extremely short time. But Baek Do-hyun still couldn't tolerate the idea of anyone standing on equal ground with him. As he spoke, he walked toward Minsok again. What happened next shocked even Minsok, because that power came from the same source as his own. Baek Do-hyun began unbuttoning his clothes. He would make an exception and let Minsok see just how powerful the blessing granted to him by the goddess truly was. But just as he had taken his coat halfway off, the loyal deputy mayor forced his way inside. He was extremely worried about Baek Do-hyun's condition. Baek Do-hyun smiled and said, was our conversation a little too loud? I apologize for troubling you. The deputy mayor immediately panicked and said Baek Do-hyun must not apologize, because the only thing that mattered was that he was safe. But Baek Do-hyun hadn't let go of his question. Why did you come in? I clearly said no one was allowed to enter. The loyal deputy mayor could only explain that the noise inside had been far too loud. Just then, Baek Do-hyun suddenly heard a dull thud and turned to look at Minsok. What is the meaning of this? Minsok said there had been a misunderstanding. He wasn't trying to say he had the right to stand as Baek Do-hyun's equal. What he meant was that since they had both received the goddess's blessing, then as a brother, Minsok was willing to follow Mayor Baek Do-hyun. In truth, Minsok had planned this from the beginning. He wanted Baek Do-hyun to develop a favorable impression of him. Cha Pum-ho couldn't help asking, are you going to kneel to him just like you kneeled to me? Minsok had his reasons, because people in power usually loved this kind of thing. That hit Cha Pum-ho a little too accurately. As long as they gained Baek Do-hyun's favor, they would be able to leave D City safely. A being who could threaten Baek Do-hyun declaring loyalty to him would be an extremely tempting offer. Baek Do-hyun couldn't possibly remain completely unmoved. But Baek Do-hyun knew Minsok was lying to him. You want to win my favor, make me trust you, protect you and your companions, and then stab me in the back? Do you really think such a pathetic lie can fool me? Minsok pretended he had been exposed, then said with a serious expression, Even if I'm lying to you, what does that change? After all, even if I tried to betray you, I would only fail in the end. You already suspect me, and your strength is above mine. To me, the safety of my companions matters most. So I would never do anything that puts them in danger. Now, do you still think I'm lying to you? My one and only representative of the goddess. The plan worked. Baek Do-hyun began to waver. He stared at Min-sok and slowly said, "The more I listen to your nonsense, the more I think you're actually my kind of person." Baek Do-hyun finally agreed to let Min-sok assist him, and Min-sok's companions would also be protected. However, loyal followers had to remember one thing forever. They had to be ready to give him everything, at any moment. The position of deputy mayor was now vacant, but Min-sok first had to pass Baek Do-hyun's test. Even Min-sok hadn't expected Baek Do-hyun to casually place that matter on him. This was exactly what Cha Pung-ho had warned him about. If Baek Do-hyun really was a cult leader, his methods would be crueler than anyone else's. Baek Do-hyun looked at Min-sok and asked, "Citizen Min-sok, are you willing to accept the test?" That night, Min-sok's test officially began. The people here were like blind puppets. Their expressions, movements, and chants for immediate execution all strangely identical. Shin Ji-woo was tied to a wooden stake. The citizens all saw him as a demon. A man in a white shirt, white vest, and bow tie walked over and asked Cha Pung-ho if he wanted some red wine, but Cha Pung-ho was in no mood to drink. The sharp-eyed Yu Da-mi noticed that all of them were wearing neckbands. She immediately realized Cha Pung-ho must be hiding something from her. Dami wanted to find her father, but the two people beside her ignored her. Cha Pung-ho had no choice but to tell them to take Dami to the back and keep her away from the crowd so she could calm down. Dami was still questioning him, asking if something had happened to her father. But as a colonel, Cha Pung-ho's most basic skill was keeping his mouth shut. Just then, Baek Do-hyun spoke. "My dear citizens, from this moment on, the execution ceremony officially begins." The crowd below instantly erupted with excitement. They shouted for the demon Shin Ji-woo to be executed immediately. Then, Baek Do-hyun continued deceiving everyone, saying there was an unfortunate piece of news he had to share before the ceremony began. The wicked demon Shin Ji-woo had tried to escape that very morning and had brutally murdered their deputy mayor. The citizens had no idea what the truth was, but because of one sentence from Baek Do-hyun, they immediately decided Shin Ji-woo was guilty. Instead, they began worrying about whether Baek Do-hyun was crying. Baek Do-hyun said with grief that it was his fault for failing to protect the deputy mayor and that his heart had been heavy with sorrow until that very morning. But now, Baek Do-hyun told them there was no need to be sad anymore, because the goddess had sent them someone worthy of becoming the new deputy mayor, someone who would punish the cunning demon, together with Baek Do-hyun. Then, he pointed toward the high platform. That person's name was Min-sok. Min-sok remembered that after Baek Do-hyun killed the deputy mayor, the so-called test was for him to burn Shin Ji-woo at the stake tonight at 11. Normally, Baek Do-hyun was the one who personally granted death to demons. But this time, he was giving that role to Min-sok. He placed the deputy mayor's headscarf on Min-sok and told him that this execution would be his to carry out. Killing demons is the fate of those who have received the blessing. If you can accept that fate, then I will accept you. The crowd below erupted with excitement once again. Min-sok had already told Cha Pung-ho in advance that he would have to kill someone during tonight's execution ceremony. Cha Pung-ho immediately said they should leave this place right now, but Min-sok stopped him and refused to let them leave yet. Cha Pung-ho was furious. Min-sok explained that as long as Baek Do-hyun remained in D-City, leaving carelessly would put them in danger. It was Min-sok's responsibility that they had come to D-City and gotten dragged into this situation. As long as it was for Yu Da-mi, Min-sok didn't care about things like morals or ethics. So he used a torch to light the rope. The flame quickly burned along the rope toward the other end. Then it spread to the flammable material below, causing a roaring fire to rise. The flames grew larger and larger, and Shin Ji-woo was overwhelmed by pain. But when the audience saw this, they became even more excited. They screamed for Shin Ji-woo, the demon, to be killed. But just then, the thick wooden stake suddenly snapped and fell straight into the sea of fire. Min-seok calmly observed the situation below. The next second, Baek Do-hyun suddenly jumped beside him and pressed down on his head. The agent of the goddess officially announced that from this moment on, Min-seok would become Baek Do-hyun's trusted confidant. "Do you accept?" Min-seok remained silent for a moment. Then he gladly accepted. Baek Do-hyun shouted, "Citizens, please cheer for our new deputy mayor Min-sok." The entire crowd below exploded with excitement, chanting Min-sok's name again and again. Not long after the test ended, the people here began to respect Deputy Mayor Min-sok. After Baek Do-hyun and his group walked away, that person finally opened the door and stepped inside. He slowly turned back to look at Cha Pong-ho and the others. Then he removed the headscarf and wig. Underneath was an unfamiliar face. "Nice to meet you. I'm Shin Ji-woo, captain of the elite squad under the Blue Hawk Unit headquarters." Cha Pong-ho wasn't surprised. He only sighed that Min-sok really was a madman. After all, Min-sok had said before that he didn't care about things like morals or ethics, but this time, he didn't actually need to go that far, because they were running out of time. Min-sok had told Cha Pong-ho to listen carefully. Tonight, while earning Baek Do-hyun's favor, he would use a body double trick to rescue Shin Ji-woo. Meanwhile, inside the sea of flames, Min-sok slowly walked out of the fire. And this was a method only Min-sok could pull off. The next day, Baek Do-hyun personally supervised the staff as they prepared the venue, all to hold the grandest deputy mayor inauguration ceremony for Min-sok. And Min-sok only arrived at the scene then. He apologized to Baek Do-hyun for being late. Baek Do-hyun remembered how Min-sok had shown no hesitation when executing the demon last night, and that actually made him feel pleased. He grabbed Min-sok's face and warned him never to be late again. "Because I hate dogs that don't obey their master." Min-sok had no choice but to obey, for now. Since there was still some time before the event began, Baek Do-hyun invited Min-sok to have tea with him first. Meanwhile, Baek Do-hyun was still completely in the dark. He believed Shin Ji-woo had been burned cleanly, leaving behind only a small part of his remains, such as his right arm. Shin Ji-woo thought he had prepared himself mentally, but when he actually saw it, he still found it hard to accept. Min-sok's skin had been burned and rotted by the fire, and sneaking away from everyone's eyes to meet Shin Ji-woo hadn't been easy. Shin Ji-woo didn't care that Min-sok had arrived late, because if not for Min-sok, he would have died in that sea of flames. At that time, Baek Do-hyun had been right in front of Shin Ji-woo, but Shin Ji-woo had been forced to suppress his rage. But judging from the attempt to shoot Baek Do-hyun, Shin Ji-woo's current ability wasn't enough to kill him. However, Shin Ji-woo could confirm one thing. With Min-sok's strength, he really might be able to eliminate Baek Do-hyun. But Min-sok asked him in return, "Why should I eliminate Baek Do-hyun? I'm the deputy mayor now, so I have no reason to do that. As for saving you, it was only because I could. If there was no other way, I would have killed you too. Still, there is one thing I'm curious about. Why do you want to kill Baek Do-hyun so badly?" Baek Do-hyun was cruel by nature, but he had still protected D-City. However, that was only the side Min-sok had seen. After hearing that, Shin Ji-woo slammed his hand down and shattered the teacup on the table, because he wanted Min-sok to know what the real Baek Do-hyun had done. "From yesterday until now, have you seen any citizens on the streets? The real citizens are all locked inside their homes, forced to keep taking medicine. They also have to face the golden wing symbol on the wall and repeat the same words over and over." Shin Ji-woo told Min-sok, "The citizens can only come outside during rallies, like puppets being controlled by strings." As he said this, he panted in anger, but thinking back, Baek Do-hyun really had protected D-City with unbelievable power. Shin Ji-woo had once imagined that Baek Do-hyun might become the savior who would rebuild the nation. Min-sok told him, "You sound a lot like someone I know." Outside the door, Cha Pong-ho suddenly sneezed. Even he looked a little confused. Shin Ji-woo continued, saying he had once protected D-City together with Baek Do-hyun. But the strange thing was, as the reclaimed area grew larger and larger, they could barely find any survivors. Until one day, while searching near Mibong Mountain, he and his subordinates found an abandoned warehouse. And inside that warehouse, they discovered the truth about Baek Do-hyun eating people. Baek Do-hyun was below, devouring citizens, while many more people were hung up alive above him. When Baek Do-hyun looked up, he realized they had seen everything. At first, Shin Ji-woo froze for a few seconds before finally realizing that the monster in front of him was Baek Do-hyun. By then, his helmet had already been knocked away by Baek Do-hyun. His subordinates had also fallen into complete chaos. Even the scar on his head was a real wound left from that day. That was why Shin Ji-woo begged Min-sok, "Please, help me return D-City's citizens to normal." But considering Udami's safety, Min-seok couldn't go against Baek Do-hyun while they were still in D-City, because all he wanted was to be a father who could live together with his daughter. Just then, Min-seok saw Yoo-mi walking over with toiletries in her hands, something she had brought for him to use. Min-seok worried that Dami might have overheard their conversation, but she had only just arrived and hadn't heard anything. Min-seok took the toiletries and told his daughter to get some rest early. At that moment, Shin Ji-woo had one more thing to tell him. Do you really think Baek Do-hyun has nothing to do with you? Every citizen here is forced to attend Baek Do-hyun's rallies. Didn't you notice anything strange there? Among all those citizens, why were there no young women at all? Min-seok pretended to go have tea with Baek Do-hyun, but in truth, he had already made his preparations. Once he received the message through the micro receiver that Cha Pung-ho and the others had already evacuated, Min-seok could finally fight without holding back, and he poured all his power into his hand. The next second, he rushed forward at sonic speed, aiming straight for Baek Do-hyun's head, and tore his head off in one strike. Anything that threatened Yoo-mi had to be completely eliminated by Min-seok. Meanwhile, Cha Pung-ho and the others had successfully escaped D-City. One soldier thought it was almost too easy for them to get out, wondering if they had been worried for nothing. But the soldier beside him said things hadn't become easier. If they were truly allowed to move freely, why would those fully armed guards have that kind of expression? They had simply received an order they absolutely could not disobey. In other words, this method had the highest chance of success. As long as Yoo-mi could be protected safely, Min-seok didn't care what happened to himself. Seeing the worried look on Dami's face, Cha Pung-ho tried to comfort her. He said Min-seok had already told them yesterday that he would come back as soon as he finished handling things, so there was nothing to worry about. The old Min-seok had always been like a fool, constantly putting himself at a disadvantage. Even when it wasn't his fault, he would always apologize first. Dami used to hate seeing her father act like that. There was even a time when a man threw a cigarette butt at Dami, but this time she felt like Min-seok had become a completely different person. She had never seen him so furious before, and last night she had seen that expression again. Even after they had gotten some distance away, when she looked back, she still saw Min-seok wearing the same expression as before. Dami didn't want to ask anything else. She only wanted to confirm one thing. Dad will come back safely, right? Cha Pung-ho gently tapped her on the head. Don't worry, Min-seok's precious daughter is still here, so he will definitely come back. Cha Pung-ho promised that Min-seok would return soon. After hearing that, Dami nodded softly. But when Cha Pung-ho said those words, his hands slipped slightly on the steering wheel. He looked at the cold sweat in his palm and silently told himself that he must never doubt Min-seok's strength. But Min-seok still had to be prepared, because Baek Do-hyun was absolutely not an easy opponent. Min-seok was just about to turn back and check the situation, when Baek Do-hyun had already rushed right in front of him. He punched Min-seok back, sending him sliding several meters across the ground. I trusted you so much. Why did you betray me? Baek Do-hyun reattached his head. This guy truly wasn't easy to deal with. Min-seok told Baek Do-hyun, I was never on your side to begin with. Baek Do-hyun blocked one strike, but Min-seok's next punch was already prepared. Baek Do-hyun was still mocking Min-seok, because deep in his subconscious, he believed his power could suppress him. You can never beat me. But in the next second, his arm was brutally twisted and broken by Min-seok. Right after that, Min-seok slammed another punch into him. With a thunderous impact, half of Baek Do-hyun's body was blown away. Before he could react, Min-seok had already teleported right in front of him. Baek Do-hyun was stunned by his speed. That punch smashed into him again, and Baek Do-hyun had no time to dodge. Before the half of his body that had just regenerated could even stabilize, Min-seok tore off one of his legs too. Baek Do-hyun thought it was impossible. Just moments ago, that man's strength had only been enough to bend his fingers. So how had he become this strong in such a short time? Min-seok continued gathering power, ready to press the advantage, because running away wouldn't solve anything. Sooner or later, Baek Do-hyun would find them. There was only one solution, and that was to end him here. Just as Min-seok's attack was about to land, someone suddenly opened fire on him. That brief interruption gave Baek Do-hyun the chance to dodge. Two subordinates rushed in to support Baek Do-hyun, but Baek Do-hyun grabbed them instead and turned them into his own nourishment. Min-seok immediately charged forward again. But Baek Do-hyun sent him flying with a single punch. Minsok crashed into the base of the wall before finally stopping. When Minsok focused his eyes, he realized Baek Do-hyun's body had expanded several times over. Baek Do-hyun roared, "This is absurd. I turned you from trash into a star, and now you want to end me? Then try it. Today, I, Baek Do-hyun, will show you just how much the goddess loves me." As it turned out, the cult leader Baek Do-hyun had once tried to run away with the money when the zombie outbreak began, only to be caught by his own followers. He had walked straight past the people begging for help, clutching a bag of cash as he tried to escape. When the followers realized Baek Do-hyun had stolen the money for himself, they immediately captured him. And the punishment for Baek Do-hyun was execution by fire. He screamed in agony inside the flames. At that time, the person who took over the cult told everyone that Baek Do-hyun's heart had been stolen by a demon. The god of Garyong is furious at his evil deeds. Only by gouging out his wicked eyes and burning his filthy body can the god's wrath be calmed. As Baek Do-hyun burned in the flames, he desperately wished someone would save him. Just as he was about to be swallowed by the fire, the goddess with golden wings covering the sky suddenly descended. She granted Baek Do-hyun a certain power. The next second, a massive blast erupted from the sea of flames, and the people finally sensed that something was wrong. They saw Baek Do-hyun slowly walking out of the fire. He told everyone that he had received the blessing of God. "I am the agent of God." Back in the present, Baek Do-hyun crouched down. Then he suddenly leapt up and appeared in front of Minsok in an instant. Fortunately, Minsok reacted in time and narrowly dodged the punch. Right after that, Minsok felt an overwhelming pressure. Baek Do-hyun launched another attack. This time, half of Minsok's face was struck. Baek Do-hyun clasped both fists together and raised them high behind his head. Then he smashed them down again, but Minsok jumped away, causing the attack to miss. The next second, Baek Do-hyun appeared in front of Minsok again. He grabbed Minsok by the head and hurled him away, sending him tumbling across the ground for dozens of meters. Baek Do-hyun slowly walked toward Minsok, still mocking him. "Trying to fight me with that little strength? Pathetic. Minsok, I'm disappointed in you." At that moment, Baek Do-hyun suddenly seemed to realize something. He finally understood why the goddess had sent a vicious demon like Minsok to his side. It was so he could personally judge Minsok for insulting the goddess's blessing. Because the goddess trusted only him, Baek Do-hyun. "My goddess, please forgive me for my sin of ignorance. For only realizing it now, I will make that cunning demon and all his companions suffer in torment until death feels like mercy. I will be the one to judge them." At this moment, Baek Do-hyun still had no idea that he had already fallen into Minsok's trap. This was the critical moment. Just as he was about to lunge at Minsok, a blinding light suddenly flashed. Shin Ji-woo pressed the button from behind. The intense light instantly blinded Baek Do-hyun. His senses collapsed, and he fell straight to the ground. Baek Do-hyun pushed himself back up, but he still had no idea what had just happened. Minsok told him, "It's an optical disruption. Your optic nerves have been damaged." Baek Do-hyun could only perceive the outlines of living creatures through sight. Although his sensory nerves were sharper than those of ordinary people, his vision recovered several times more slowly. For someone like him, the thing to watch out for most was intense light. Baek Do-hyun swung his fists wildly, shouting, "Stop using these useless little tricks. Shut up and come out." But the effects of sensory imbalance had already appeared, and he stumbled before falling again. Strong light and noise would directly strike the brain and trigger neural instability. And if the nervous system had surpassed human limits, the pain would become even more intense. In this state, all of Baek Do-hyun's senses had gone beyond human limits, and because of that, every nerve in his body was exploding out of control. Only then did Baek Do-hyun realize that Minsok had calculated all of this from the very beginning. First, Minsok pretended to look down on raw power to provoke him and force him into this form. Then he pretended he couldn't win, and slowly lured Baek Do-hyun here. Everything had been part of Minsok's plan from the start. Baek Do-hyun exploded with rage. Minsok admitted that Baek Do-hyun's strength and speed were far greater than his own. "Baek Do-hyun, you really have received an enormous amount of love." But what Minsok wanted to tell him was, compared to the power of being loved by the goddess in D City, the power that erupts from protecting someone is far stronger. Minsok had already prepared himself to protect. So what came next was simple. He would keep beating Baek Do-hyun down. He would beat him until he could no longer recover. After 13.5 hours, Baek Do-hyun finally lost all ability to fight. Shin Ji-woo witnessed the entire process from the side. Min-sok threw his brass knuckles onto the ground. Then he slowly stood up. Min-sok had successfully eliminated Baek Do-hyun. Shin Ji-woo sighed. I never thought I'd see Baek Do-hyun reduced to this state. In his eyes, Min-sok had achieved something incredible. But Min-sok believed it was Shin Ji-woo who had provided the key information. Shin Ji-woo knew very well that even with Baek Do-hyun's sensory nerves out of control, he would never be easy to defeat. The reason Min-sok was able to overpower Baek Do-hyun was because Min-sok himself was stronger. Just when both of them thought everything was over, the pile of rotten flesh on the ground saw the goddess again. She told him, "Stand up." The next second, the flesh on the ground began gathering back together. Baek Do-hyun's second stage ended, and his third stage officially began. Shin Ji-woo clearly hadn't expected him to transform into this form. This was also his first time seeing Baek Do-hyun like this. But Min-sok had seen a tardigrade type high-level mutated zombie before. Its name was tardigrade. Only now did Min-sok realize that Baek Do-hyun's true identity was actually a high-level mutated zombie. He grabbed Shin Ji-woo and ran outside. If Baek Do-hyun really was tardigrade, then its defining trait was becoming tougher the more it was attacked. The two of them sprinted outside, while tardigrade's body grew larger and larger behind them. Meanwhile, the person waiting to host the rally still hadn't seen Baek Do-hyun arrive. He had heard a huge commotion coming from Baek Do-hyun's side, but 3 hours had passed and Baek Do-hyun still hadn't appeared, making him wonder if something had really happened. Someone beside him immediately told him to stop overthinking it, saying he clearly had no idea what kind of man Mayor Baek was. Baek Do-hyun must have urgent business to handle and would show up soon. But just then, a massive sound erupted from Baek Do-hyun's direction. Everyone was instantly startled. Then, they saw a huge zombie with iron-like fangs and blood-red fur covering its entire body. The citizens fell into panic, and the person on stage froze in terror, unable to understand why a monster had appeared inside Saber Tower. Tardigrade began devouring the believers as energy, and the crowd instantly scattered in panic. No one understood why a zombie had appeared in a place where Baek Do-hyun was supposed to be, and they were still waiting for Baek Do-hyun to come save them. But they had no idea that the fanged man-eating zombie in front of them was Baek Do-hyun himself. Just then, a shell suddenly blasted into the zombie. Shin Ji-woo had made his move, trying to draw Tardigrade's attention. Soon, Tardigrade took the bait. It lunged forward, only to miss completely. Shin Ji-woo planned to ride his motorcycle and lure Tardigrade to the target location. Before this, Min-sok had already told him the key information about Tardigrade. Its outer skin was tougher and more impact-resistant than high-strength steel, and whenever it was attacked, its tissue structure would become even more solid. Shin Ji-woo lured Tardigrade all the way toward the Saber building, but falling debris caused his motorcycle to flip, throwing him hard to the ground. Lying beneath Tardigrade's feet, he saw the monster towering over him, like a shadow blocking the sky. Tardigrade opened its massive bloody mouth. Now, Shin Ji-woo only had to wait for Min-sok to act and draw it fully into the trap. This plan had also come from Min-sok. Tardigrade's outer shell was nearly indestructible, but its internal organs were extremely fragile, so he had Shin Ji-woo lure the zombie to the Saber building, where Min-sok would finish it off. Min-sok took out the chainsaw he had prepared in advance. He pulled the starter cord, and the sharp roar of the chainsaw rang out. The next second, Min-sok leapt into the air and dropped straight into Tardigrade's mouth. Not long after, the chainsaw burst out from inside Tardigrade's body. Tardigrade screamed in agony. Min-sok began widening the wound from the inside. Once Tardigrade's body had been completely cut open, Min-sok crawled straight out from inside it. Then he started from the top of Tardigrade's head and sawed downward all the way through. Shin Ji-woo was completely stunned. The citizens at the scene were also shocked by what they saw. From the distant mountain, Cha Pung-ho and the others witnessed Tardigrade being sliced apart, layer by layer. Not long after, Min-sok sawed Tardigrade's head to pieces. Tardigrade, the high-level mutated zombie, was finally completely destroyed. The city was about to be reclaimed. After Baek Do-hyun was cut into pieces by Min-sok, only his head remained. Yet he still felt smug when he heard the citizens calling out. He still believed the citizens needed him more than anything. Min-sok hadn't expected Baek Do-hyun to still be able to speak, and even he had to admit the man was stubbornly resilient. Baek Do-hyun told Min-sok, "I won't die. Even if this body rots away, as long as the citizens continue to fear and revere me, I will live forever in this city. Min-suk stepped directly on his remaining head and coldly said, "You're still stupid to the very end. You've already forgotten that there's one person in D-City who doesn't revere you at all." Baek Do-hyun was instantly startled. Because at that moment, the giant screen was playing footage of him eating people. The citizens could hardly believe their eyes. Only then did they learn that the dead deputy mayor had also been killed by Baek Do-hyun. The footage showed him devouring young women inside the warehouse, with many more victims strung up above him. As the close-up of Baek Do-hyun eating people remained frozen on the giant screen, Shin Ji-woo stepped back onto the stage. The citizens finally learned the truth, and some were shocked to see that Shin Ji-woo was still alive after surviving the monster. But even with the truth right in front of them, many of them still couldn't fully believe it. Min-suk had already included this in his plan because he knew that once Baek Do-hyun disappeared, D-City would inevitably fall into chaos. So to stop that chaos, a new leader had to appear, and Min-suk believed Shin Ji-woo would do a better job than Baek Do-hyun. Even if the old Shin Ji-woo had lacked confidence, the man he was now had to step forward. He had to repeat the truth with his own mouth. Everything Baek Do-hyun had done was meant to control the citizens, and what Shin Ji-woo had to do now was wake them up again. After the citizens heard everything Baek Do-hyun had done, they clenched their fists one by one and began accepting Shin Ji-woo as their new leader. Min-suk then gave Baek Do-hyun one final warning. "Listen carefully, D-City will be reborn, and no one will remember you. Rather than using people's will, the will to protect them is far more powerful. Go witness it yourself in hell." Baek Do-hyun angrily shouted Min-suk's name one last time. In the next second, Min-suk crushed his head completely under his foot. After that, D-City began cleaning up the battlefield. Shin Ji-woo walked toward the soldiers, and the people who had arrested him before couldn't help feeling nervous. But Shin Ji-woo only gave one of them a light tap on the chest. Then he nodded at him. After Baek Do-hyun's death, D-City finally began rebuilding. Although traces left behind by Baek Do-hyun still remained throughout the city, Cha Pung-ho and the others also reunited with Min-suk, and Yu Dami finally returned to her father's side. As long as Shin Ji-woo was there, D-City would slowly get back on the right track. Cha Pung-ho returned a little later than planned, but unlike what he had feared, the base had firmly withstood the zombie attack. Everyone had panicked because Cha Pung-ho left without saying anything, so now that he had returned, Cha Hae-ri was genuinely happy to see them. The soldier beside Cha Hae-ri asked where Min-suk was. Cha Hae-ri's eyes instantly lit up. Cha Pung-ho told them that from now on, they would prepare for a large-scale relocation. Meanwhile, Min-suk stood in a high place. He had finally done it. Although the journey had been full of hardships and unexpected variables, Min-suk and his daughter had finally settled down in D-City. He raised his hand in response to Yu Dami's call. But after everything he had gone through, he had also discovered an unpleasant truth. In this life, no matter how strong a shelter was, as long as zombies still existed in the world, Yu Dami's future safety could never be perfectly guaranteed. So Min-suk had only one option left. He would eliminate everything that could threaten Yu Dami. From now on, Min-suk would use D-City as his base and wipe out every single zombie across the entire country. Meanwhile, at Daecheon Dam near D-City, although the water level was still within the safe range, the inflow was too fast and could cause problems with the dam's power supply system. The urgent priority was to lower the water level. The staff quickly yelled at the person standing near the edge, "Come back, it's dangerous over there." But he noticed that the man looked dazed and couldn't understand why he was acting that way. Then he instinctively turned to look at the calm surface of the water. In the next second, a huge crimson eye suddenly appeared beneath the surface. Its pupils sharply contracted, giving off an eerie and terrifying aura. Meanwhile, Garyon Base kept trying to contact D-City, but an hour passed with no response. In the end, they concluded that every city seemed to have been taken over by zombies. Just then, he suddenly received information that a massive number of zombies were gathering within a 10-meter radius, and those zombies were charging straight toward them. So he immediately asked the commander what they should do now. The commander took a few steps toward the gate. Then he picked up the key on his chest and ordered everyone to move underground immediately. But his subordinates quickly tried to stop him, because using that method could lead to the destruction of every city. The commander told them, "The cities have already been destroyed. Only this method can give us a chance to strike back." Another soldier was still anxiously waiting for a response from the cities. Just when he thought there would be no hope left, one city suddenly connected to their communication channel. He immediately turned back to confirm the situation, and it really was a reply from an operation unit. The commander looked at the key in his hand and decided to believe one more time. The reason Gyeryong had become a top-tier fortress was because not even a single drop of water could seep inside. On top of that, they had the zombie commander to raise everyone's morale. As long as they could reclaim even one city, they would still have a chance to fight back. But just then, something seemed to drip down from above. The commander looked at the key and noticed a drop of water from an unknown source, making him feel both confused and uneasy. When he looked up, he found a transparent gel-like mass hidden inside the ceiling, with droplets of water still falling from it. The gel-like mass began to wriggle. The next second, it suddenly opened a crimson pupil as large as a wheel. 1 week after D-City began rebuilding, Cha Pung-ho was communicating with Min-sok. In response to Min-sok's urging, Cha Pung-ho said preparation took time. Moving more than 2,000 people was no small task, and he still felt like they weren't fully ready. Min-sok asked, "Have you convinced everyone?" Cha Pung-ho laughed and said, "Of course, except for someone." When Min-sok asked who, Cha Pung-ho replied, "You already know the answer. It's obviously Cha Hae-ri." At that moment, Cha Hae-ri was doing handstand push-ups, already reaching number 46. But she kept thinking about the conversation between Cha Pung-ho and Min-sok, especially that one line, "Whether the people here live or die has nothing to do with me." Just then, an image suddenly flashed through her mind. Her arms lost coordination, causing her to fall hard to the ground. Cha Hae-ri sat up, as if that fall had finally snapped her awake. Cha Pung-ho told Min-sok, "That little girl still can't believe your words." Min-sok could understand that. After all, someone trained personally by Cha Pung-ho would never fail to understand how important this relocation was. Colonel Cha was right. D-City had just been reclaimed, but it now had to face threats that could arrive at any moment. Its current combat strength was absurdly weak. Meanwhile, Cha Pung-ho's army was the strongest force in name and reality. If they could take root and grow in D-City, it would become the first true stronghold. Min-sok told Cha Pung-ho, "Finish preparations as soon as possible. I'll complete everything on my side before you arrive." Gyeongdae was the heart of every military force under the Ministry of National Defense. Min-sok told Shin Ji-woo, "I'm going to Gyeongdae." Min-sok had already made up his mind. In the previous loop, when he arrived at D-City, its military power hadn't been very strong. The zombies that appeared back then weren't as terrifying as they were now, and Shin Ji-woo's command alone had been enough to defend against them. But several years later, he discovered a top-secret classified document inside the Dunsan government complex. According to that document, beneath the joint headquarters at Gyeongdae, there were high-performance military assets completely hidden from the outside world. If D-City could obtain those powerful weapons, even the high-level mutated zombies that appeared later could be crushed with ease. But now, they no longer had years to wait. Before another variable appeared, they had to obtain the powerful equipment needed to protect D-City. Min-sok looked in that direction and saw two people approaching. One was Second Lieutenant M. Jung-hyun from Shin Ji-woo's unit. The other was First Lieutenant Han Ta-ni. These were the two people Shin Ji-woo had specifically sent. They had been locked in the exhibition hall basement after resisting Baek Do-hyun. They were deeply loyal, willing to sacrifice their lives to complete an order. Even Baek Do-hyun had once wanted to recruit them instead of killing them. Shin Ji-woo believed they would definitely be helpful to Min-sok. After all, the underground path to Gyeongdae was extremely dangerous. So Min-sok asked, "Are you ready?" They both nodded at the same time. And so, Min-sok led the two of them toward the heart of the military, Gyeongdae. Meanwhile, the landline inside the Daecheong Dam office kept ringing, but no one answered. After that massive and bizarre incident, everyone here had already been dried out, leaving no one to handle the situation. The water level at Daecheong Dam kept rising, even spilling over the dam, while the water pressure shot up rapidly. Soon, cracks began appearing across the dam. In the end, the flood broke straight through it. Meanwhile, inside Gyeongdae's underground top-secret area, zombies had somehow appeared. They seemed to be drawn by something and suddenly charged in the same direction. The next second, a shell blasted straight into the zombies' faces. Then the team launched a fierce assault inside. When killing zombies, they refused to waste even a single extra bullet. The zombies that were shot down tripped the other zombies behind them. After they eliminated every zombie closest to them, Han Ta-ni removed the protective gear from her head. Inside this top-secret area, Both the second lieutenant and first lieutenant performed well. Even though they hadn't fought for some time, their skills hadn't declined much. But compared to the man leading them, their strength seemed insignificant. After all, Min-seok was the one who had helped Shin Ji-woo end Baek Do-hyun and restore D-City to normal. Judging by how easily he wiped out zombies, his presence was overwhelmingly intimidating. Min-seok smiled at Han Tani. That made Han Tani blush slightly. To hide her embarrassment, she pretended to cough. As for Jung-hyun, his evaluation of Min-seok was, with his strength, one person would be enough. But Min-seok said, "You'll be a great help to me, because from this point on, even I'll start having a hard time." Min-seok remembered that in the previous loop, this was an area they had to pass through on the way to the weapons cache. Once the door opened, 2 mid-level zombies would launch an ambush. He remembered it clearly because right here, inside the small auxiliary room behind the northern side, they had found 11 bodies that had died only recently, and all of them were uninfected human corpses. Those people had endured in this dark space for more than a year, but in the end, they still failed to escape. Thinking of that, Min-seok finished entering the password. This time, he hoped he could save them. As a second lieutenant, Jung-hyun was observant. He immediately noticed that Min-seok knew the exact location and password of the top-secret area, so he asked why. Min-seok only said, "It's a long story. In short, I saw it in an important document. Once the door opens, zombies will launch a surprise attack. From this moment on, we are officially entering the underground area." The group waited cautiously for the door to open, but when it did, they saw people standing inside, and there was more than one of them. When Jung-hyun and Han Tani saw the survivors, they both felt relieved, thinking Min-seok's prediction had finally been wrong this time. But then they noticed the tense expression on Min-seok's face, as if even he couldn't fully understand what was happening. When they looked at the survivors again, they realized those people weren't normal at all. The head of a high-level mutated zombie slowly began to appear. Finally, its true form was revealed. In the end, Min-seok had been right. Then, fleshy insects began crawling out from inside the door. One of them suddenly sprang up and opened its fanged mouth. Taking advantage of Jung-hyun's moment of carelessness, it burrowed straight into his body. The next second, Jung-hyun felt violently ill, and his whole body began trembling. Then, tentacle-like things burst out of his eye socket, still growing wildly, and more tentacles even began emerging from his back. Han Tani didn't run. Instead, she tried to wake Jung-hyun up, but at that moment, Min-seok grabbed her wrist. Then he picked her up and immediately ran. This thing hunted living hosts and took over their bodies. It was an omnivorous parasitic mutated zombie, and its reproduction speed was extremely high. Both zombies and humans could become its hosts. The survivors here had all already been parasitized, and even Min-seok didn't understand why these things had appeared here. Now, Min-seok had to stay focused while avoiding the zombies. At the same time, he absolutely couldn't let the parasites leave this place, or D-City would be in danger. Meanwhile, at the shooting range, Shin Ji-woo praised Yu Da-mi for improving her accuracy compared to the morning. But her horizontal deviation while shooting was still too large, so she would need intensive training before being tested again. He asked, "Da-mi, do you understand?" Da-mi said, "I understand." Before this, Da-mi herself had asked Shin Ji-woo to train her. Because in an apocalypse like this, a girl like her would have a hard time surviving. The only reason she had survived until now was because Min-seok had always protected her. So even if she couldn't be much help, she didn't want to keep dragging Min-seok down. Da-mi asked Shin Ji-woo to arrange training for her because this was the only way she could protect herself. And so, she had trained for 5 full days. If an ordinary female trainee had faced this level of intensity, she probably wouldn't have lasted. But Da-mi was doing well, and her willpower was far beyond normal. She truly was Min-seok's daughter. Just then, a soldier rushed over to report an emergency. Shin Ji-woo thought it was a zombie attack. But the soldier directly told him, Daechung Dam has been destroyed. Shin Ji-woo could hardly believe it. That afternoon, communications with Daechung Dam had suddenly been cut off, so they sent people to confirm the situation and found that all the managers were dead, while the dam had suffered massive damage. Shin Ji-woo immediately asked about the disaster situation. According to the expected route, the water should have flowed along the Gum River basin and drained toward Nonsan, but this time, the water seemed to have a will of its own. It suddenly changed direction in an emergency shift, and was now flowing toward Gyeongdae through Gyeong Stream. At Gyeong Stream, just as the soldier had said, The raging water was surging toward Gyeongdae, and it was during that incident that Min-seok asked Shin Ji-woo a question that left him shocked. "Can you kill me?" Shin Ji-woo thought he had misheard and immediately asked Min-seok, "What do you mean?" Min-seok said, "Ever since I was reborn in this strange body, one question has always remained in my mind. Can I actually die?" And it was only after his battle with Baek Do-hyun that he finally found the simplest way to kill himself. Shin Ji-woo immediately ordered an alert to be issued and demanded that every person deployed to Gyeongdae be rescued. He also ordered every department to enter emergency combat readiness. Someone worried that it would be too dangerous for Shin Ji-woo to go alone and suggested forming a special task force right away. But there was no time and no spare manpower, so Shin Ji-woo only told him, "Keep reporting every situation directly to me." Then, Shin Ji-woo jumped on his motorcycle and rushed out, because this situation could put Min-seok in serious danger. The first way to kill Min-seok was to make him die repeatedly at such a high frequency that he wouldn't have time to recover. And the simplest, most effective method was prolonged suffocation. Only that could make Min-seok truly die. Meanwhile, beneath Gyeongdae, Min-seok and the others were being relentlessly chased by a high-level mutated zombie. Han Tani kept firing at the parasites chasing them from behind. Even then, Min-seok still found time to tease Han Tani. "You can shoot that accurately in that position?" Her cheeks instantly heated up, and she told him, "Save that kind of talk for later. The real question is what we should do now." Min-seok told her, "The parasites can easily pierce through other biological tissue, but they can't bite through solid walls. And on the southeast side of Gyeongdae, at the end of the corridor in Area G1, according to my memory, that door should be just ahead." So he shouted, "G1." The moment he said it, the input program woke up, and the classified bunker access authentication began, preparing for left eye iris recognition. Before the prompt even finished, Min-seok shouted, "Activate the emergency authentication procedure," and spoke the password first. The input terminal lit up red, showing that the password was correct and the door was opening. After Min-seok pushed Han Ta-ni inside, the special security gate immediately began closing. The zombie arm reaching through was sliced off by the gate. Han Ta-ni instantly opened fire and eliminated the parasites that had gotten inside. After that, she finally caught her breath and asked Min-seok, "What is this place?" But only then did she realize that Min-seok hadn't come inside. Outside the door, Min-seok had already been grabbed by the high-level mutated zombie, and no matter how hard he struggled, he couldn't escape. The parasitized zombies were rushing toward him with a swarm of parasites. The next second, Min-seok was bitten by a parasite. When he turned his head, he realized one parasite had already burrowed into his body, while even more parasites kept lunging at him. Meanwhile, Shin Ji-woo rushed in before his vehicle had even fully stopped. He still couldn't understand what Min-seok had said back then. "Why would you tell me how to kill you?" Min-seok had said, "You may not understand me, but I understand you very well." Shin Ji-woo was more righteous than most people, and he had a strong sense of responsibility. He was someone who could make a difficult choice for the greater good. After the battle with Baek Do-hyun, Min-seok realized he was no longer the same as before. He asked Shin Ji-woo if he could see it too. "Maybe one day, I will also mutate into something uncontrollable." So, Min-seok asked Shin Ji-woo that if that day ever came, he should kill him immediately, because he wanted to remain Udami's father until the very end. He didn't want to be remembered by Dami as a monster. Now, Min-seok was about to be taken over by the parasites, and he struggled desperately to find even one chance. Back then, he had also told Shin Ji-woo, "Don't worry yet, because I still can't become a monster." But now, when the high-level mutated zombies heard his roar, they no longer dared to move forward. At that moment, root-like mutated tentacles suddenly erupted and wiped out the zombie horde in front of him. Min-seok had once promised that, until Udami's world returned to normal, he wouldn't lose his mind, even if he died. And the parasites inside Min-seok's body were now completely under his control instead. Thanks to the parasites entering his body, Min-seok awakened parasitic mode. The situation that had just been controlled by the high-level mutated zombie was instantly reversed by Min-seok. Now he was no longer easy to deal with. The parasitized zombie in front of him charged again, but Min-seok grabbed it and lifted it into the air, then crushed it on the spot. Right after that, the other zombies rushed him all at once. Min-seok crouched down and pulled his arm back. Then he whipped out tentacles as hard as steel rebar, piercing through the zombies in an instant. The destroyed zombies began melting on the surface, then wriggled and gathered together. In the end, they formed a huge lump of flesh, covered in countless eyes. Min-sok stood there with his head lowered. The next second, he suddenly raised his head and charged straight at the flesh lump. Han Tani heard the constant crashes outside the door and didn't dare relax for even a second. But when she saw the person in front of her, she froze in place. Min-sok said to her, "Sorry to keep you waiting, Lieutenant Han. Are you okay? I believed this was the safest place. Looks like I was right." What a relief. But Han Tani's attention was completely fixed on Min-suk's face, because his face now looked just like those zombies from earlier. Had Mayor Min-suk been infected? Min-sok turned to Han Tani and said, "I may have become a zombie, but I'm still me." Han Tani found it impossible to believe. But Min-sok told her, "You should know this already. For me, something like this is possible." After hearing him say that, Han Tani eventually nodded. Min-sok only smiled, thinking that this felt different from the death he had experienced in his previous life. It felt more like being forcibly dragged back from the gates of death. Just like that time, even though the situation was completely different, the emotion filling his heart was exactly the same. It was the will to stay by Madison's side and protect her. Maybe Madison wasn't the person Min-sok needed to save. Maybe she was the one who had saved Min-sok. But inside this underground fortress that should have been sealed like an iron barrel, some kind of variable seemed to have occurred. In his previous life, Min-sok had seen the soldiers' corpses here. They were people who had taken their own lives, so where had they gone? What had happened here? Just then, Min-sok noticed a key on the ground. It was an authentication key, deep beneath Gyeongdae. At the end of a narrow corridor farther below, there was a red door. That door had another name, Hades Gate, and it was the highest level area in this place. In the entire building, only one person had the authority to approach Hades Gate. That person was the commander of the General Command Headquarters, Major General Kwok Sing-chel. But he had failed to stop this disaster and couldn't endure the overwhelming guilt. In the end, he destroyed the only key to Hades Gate, chose death, and escaped from everything. What Min-sok couldn't understand was why this key was now lying on the ground completely intact, as if someone had deliberately left it there. That made him deeply suspicious. At that moment, a shadow quietly brushed past the corner of the ceiling. Meanwhile, Shin Ji-woo arrived above Gyeong Stream in a helicopter. He immediately picked up the radio, connected to the channel, and reported the situation. The water released by the collapse of Daecheon Dam is rapidly pouring into Gyeong Stream. All of Gyeongdae is being flooded. Bravo. Evacuate immediately. This is Alpha. Whoever receives this, respond immediately. Min-sok suddenly looked up at the ceiling. He felt as if someone was watching him, though it might have only been his imagination. Han Tani then discovered something on the ground. It looked like a string of numbers carved with a knife. She read it aloud once. From Min-sok's observation, it looked like a 13-digit number carved in a hurry. This was also the first time Min-sok had encountered this variable. Neither of them knew what the number meant. Min-sok had already made it through the underground fortress, and now planned to keep moving. Han Tani asked, "Are we going to the warehouse, or returning to reorganize D-City?" Min-sek told her, "Neither. We're heading to an even deeper, lower level." Only then did Han Tani realize that there was an even deeper area beneath this place. Down there was technology that could strengthen D-City, as well as the key for humanity to restart its counterattack. But that also meant it was extremely dangerous, and they would face something even more dangerous than what had just happened. Min-sok asked Han Tani, "Are you willing to go with me?" Han Tani promised absolute loyalty. "Since I've decided to serve you, I'll follow you to the end." Min-sok raised the corner of his mouth and said, "Then we're heading to the Red Gate." Han Tani immediately replied, "Ready anytime." But under the table, a faint patch of dull white could barely be seen. It was an eye with a crimson pupil, secretly watching them. Meanwhile, Park Ki-won was preparing to organize the situation and report it to Shin Ji-woo. His subordinates had already passed down his instructions, telling the soldiers to report to him immediately if anything happened. He remembered when he had tried to persuade Shin Ji-woo to stay in D-City, because D-City could be flooded at any moment. On top of that, Daecheon Dam had lost its power supply. Even if they activated emergency power, it would only last 1 hour, and after that, D-City would fall completely into darkness. After hearing his report, Shin Ji-woo remained silent for a moment. Then he ordered Park Ki-won, evacuate all citizens to higher ground, keep essential facilities powered, and put the entire city into power-saving mode. Also, contact Sergeant Kim Moon-sik to confirm the cause of Daecheon Dam's collapse and whether it can still be repaired. Have him study every possible option. Kim Moon-sik immediately arranged it. Park Ki-won still felt that Shin Ji-woo shouldn't leave D-City at a time like this. But Shin Ji-woo told Park Ki-won, "I fully understand the seriousness of the situation. Still, there is a chance for survival now, and I can't simply give up. Besides, Min-suk is someone D-City absolutely needs in order to survive." Shin Ji-woo gave himself only 30 minutes. "If I can't find Min-suk, I will return to D-City immediately." Shin Ji-woo called Min-suk's name from above Garyongdae, searching for any trace of him. Meanwhile, Hades' Gate stood at the end of an ancient corridor, a rusted red iron door that could only be opened with an authentication key. For 33 years, no one had spoken of it. For 68 years, no one had been allowed to enter this place. Those who knew this top-secret information called it Hades' Gate, but only a very small number of people knew its real name, the Ghost Warehouse. And inside this place, there were countless heavy weapons. Han Tani found it unbelievable. Beside the red gate, a sentence was carved in English. Construction began in 1958 and was completed in 1991. Min-suk remembered an article he had once happened to see in a newspaper. According to that report, tactical weapons had been deployed here in 1985, and after the denuclearization declaration in 1991, all of them were supposedly removed. Based on the official records at the time, there had been as many as 950 weapons, but now it turned out those weapons had remained beneath Garyongdae all this time. How was that possible? Min-suk clenched his fist. But there was one thing he could be sure of. This place held the power to end the zombie disaster in one strike. Just then, Han Tani called out to Min-suk, snapping him out of his thoughts. Min-suk explained, "I was just thinking," but he was starting to feel something wrong with himself, as if his body no longer completely belonged to him. He had to stay fully alert, because this power couldn't only destroy zombies, it could also wipe out every city. Then, he suddenly noticed that there was another red gate below. What kind of place was that? Han Tani asked if they should return and report to their superiors first. But Min-suk planned to confirm the situation down there first. At that moment, someone suddenly called out, "Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Welcome." A person appeared in front of them. The man smiled and said, "It's a pleasure to meet you." Han Tani recognized him at once. It was Major General Kwak Soon-chol. But Min-suk immediately stepped in front of Han Tani. He coldly questioned, "Who are you, really?" The other man only smiled. The next second, a huge crimson eye opened on his forehead and he said, "So you noticed me?" His body began swelling rapidly, tearing through his military uniform while mocking voices kept coming from his body, saying things like, "What a shame, we were discovered." Those voices were coming from several faces growing out of his back. They sneered, saying, "You clearly know nothing." A group of half-closed giant eyes stared at Min-suk, then suddenly began laughing. Min-suk immediately realized this thing was incredibly fast. This was the second major variable after Baek Do-hyun, and another mutated zombie he had never seen in his previous life. Fighting an unknown zombie here without understanding its traits was far too dangerous. Min-suk grabbed Han Tani and ordered, "Jump down, now." Han Tani followed the order and jumped without hesitation. Min-suk then whipped out tentacles as hard as steel rebar. They slammed directly into the mutated zombie. But the next second, Min-suk froze in shock. The mutated zombie simply stared at him with its massive eye. Then, an explosive impact rang out. Min-suk was forced several steps back. From that exchange, he understood that this thing's skin was absurdly tough. His attack couldn't damage it at all. If the battle dragged on too long, something uncontrollable might happen. No matter what, Min-suk had to find a way. But just then, the mutated zombie called out his name. Min-suk was stunned. As if it had read his mind, the creature laughed and said, "Min-suk, you must be curious, right? You clearly know nothing. Do you want to know? Should I tell you myself?" Min-suk had never encountered a mutated zombie that retained reason and knew who he was. What exactly was this thing? Min-suk tried to talk to the zombie, asking, "Have you been following us this whole time?" The mutated zombie pointed at itself, then burst into mocking laughter. "Followed you into the underground fortress? Then followed you all the way here. Everything you just mentioned was my masterpiece." Min-suk knows nothing. Min-suk is just a big idiot. The mutated zombie kept clutching its stomach and laughing. Then it suddenly lunged at Min-suk, and the two immediately locked into a struggle. During the fight, it said, "Min-suk's eyes are truly annoying. Do you think you're special? You know nothing. You're just another Baek Do-hyun." The moment Min-seok heard it mention Baek Do-hyun, his heart sank. The mutated zombie seized the chance and threw Min-seok away. Min-seok slid several meters across the ground. Unable to understand how this thing knew about Baek Do-hyun, the mutated zombie raised both hands as it walked toward him and said, "Baek Do-hyun, the agent of God." He was nothing but a toy. The faces on its back echoed along. That's right, just his toy. Min-seok is also his toy, but Min-seok is defective. That's right, broken trash. Min-seok is defective, Min-seok is trash. Min-seok was stunned by the scene in front of him. The zombie continued, saying it hated Min-seok more than anything. "You are just a zombie, a defective product." Min-seok couldn't understand a single thing the mutated zombie was saying, but the question that had troubled him for so long was finally starting to have an answer. Baek Do-hyun. Min-seok himself, and the entire zombie outbreak, was the true source of all this. The winged goddess? Did she lure him into this dangerous place just to get rid of him, a defective product who was unlike Baek Do-hyun and not loyal to her? Right now, Min-seok only wanted to know where that winged goddess was. After hearing him, the mutated zombie finally lost control and burst into laughter. "Do you really think killing trash like you would require this much effort?" Min-seok then asked. "Then why did you bring me here?" The mutated zombie raised its right hand and told Min-seok to give this place to you. That only made Min-seok even more confused, because the mutated zombie had seen the expression Min-seok made when he first saw this place. "You were excited, weren't you? You want to use this to destroy everything too, don't you? What you will become, and what you will do to humanity, Min-seok. You know nothing." Just then, Han-tani rushed over carrying a box of grenades. Then she forcefully threw everything inside the box out. This was a trap Min-seok had prepared in advance. When Han-tani jumped down earlier, he had told her to go to Red Gate ESR. Min-seok immediately caught her with his tentacles. Han-tani had also seen the label on the Red Gate sign, Explosive Storage Room. Min-seok caught several grenades with his tentacles. Then he shoved them into every mouth on the mutated zombie's back and pushed it away. Right after that, Min-seok wrapped the mutated zombie completely with his tentacles. Then the grenades exploded, blasting the mutated zombie into pieces, while Min-seok himself was also caught in the blast. Chunks of the zombie splattered across the nearby weapons and walls. Min-seok's arm began regenerating quickly, and he finally managed to catch his breath. But when he thought back to what that zombie had said, Min-seok knew its tone, which sounded like it saw through everything, was only a tactic meant to shake his mind. And yet, those insane words still made his heart beat faster and faster. Just then, Han-tani slapped Min-seok across the face and snapped him awake. Because no matter how she called him earlier, he hadn't reacted. Min-seok simply said, "Sometimes I really do need you to do that." At that moment, everything around them began shaking violently. Han-tani thought it was an earthquake and said, "We have to leave. Now." But then the zombie's voice echoed through the area again. "Min-seok, don't leave." Min-seok looked up toward the ceiling, and the voice continued, "Min-seok, don't go. Play with me a little longer, because I still have a gift to give you." The next second, a massive wave of water suddenly poured in. Min-seok looked around and saw the floodwater had already rushed right in front of them. Judging from the force of the water and the direction it was flowing in, Min-seok immediately knew this wasn't a simple leak caused by an earthquake. The surface had already been completely flooded, and the floodwater was pouring underground all at once. Realizing there was no way to dodge it, Min-seok immediately told Han-tani, "Hold your breath." The two of them took a deep breath at the same time. The next second, the surging water swept Han-tani away. At the last instant, Min-seok grabbed her and pulled her as he swam toward the exit. They were in an even deeper underground level. If they delayed any longer, they would be trapped here, so they had to escape in one push. The exit was right ahead, just a little farther. Soon, they finally swam out to the surface. Just as Min-seok had expected, the ground above had already been flooded. But what exactly had happened here? He realized Han-tani was about to suffocate, so he had to get her above the water first. But then that thing's voice suddenly came from below. "Min-seok, give up." One of Min-seok's legs had already been tightly wrapped by the zombie. "Stop struggling so desperately. Your last resistance is meaningless. You don't need to struggle anymore." Even Min-seok hadn't expected the zombie to catch up this quickly. But right now, he had to save Han-tani from the water first. Soon, Min-seok thought of a way. Shin Ji-woo was circling above in a helicopter. Minsok used his tentacles to throw Han Tani out of the water. Shin Ji-woo immediately spotted her. He quickly flew the helicopter over and caught her. Shin Ji-woo hurriedly asked, "How did you come out of the water? Where are Minsok and the others?" Han Tani gasped for air. She struggled to tell him. "Minsok is still in the water." Underwater, the zombie continued. "Minsok, give up. You've already looped 100 times. No matter what you do to D-City, no matter how hard you struggle, humanity will all die in the end. This is her almighty will, and the future that has already been decided. Submit, become a true zombie, and serve her. Only then can you survive, and only then can Madison survive too." The next second, the calm water suddenly exploded into a spray, dozens of meters high. The helicopter quickly flew to the side, while Han Tani stared down at the situation below. She shouted, "Mayor Minsok," and the towering spray of water finally began to fall. At that moment, Han Tani suddenly heard a strange sound behind her. When she turned around, she saw that the arm was still growing. Soon, a human-shaped body began to form. Shin Ji-woo spoke and said, "Sorry about this, Minsok. No matter how many times I see you like this, I don't think I'll ever get used to it in this lifetime." This mission of Minseok's had been completed, though just barely. After that, the floodwaters that had swallowed Gyeongdae receded as if by magic. D-City fell into darkness for 3 full days, but under the control of the elite forces, the citizens remained safe. The damaged parts of Daecheon Dam were urgently repaired, and power was finally restored. Later, Minsok and the others returned fully armed to the underground area of Gyeongdae. Just as Minsok had said, powerful equipment really was hidden here. Shin Ji-woo nodded, and Minsok nodded back. Then he looked at Han Tani. Han Tani nodded as well. It turned out that Minsok had already handed her the authentication key to Hades' Gate for safekeeping. At first, Han Tani didn't understand why, so Minsok explained, "These weapons are meant to strengthen D-City. I can't allow them to become tools that bring about destruction." That was why Minsok believed it was safer for Han Tani to keep the key. For now, Hades' Gate would remain a secret, known only to the two of them, and it mustn't be opened until the final moment. Minsok stood here once again, but Madison felt that something about her father had changed. Han Tani told her, maybe after Gyeongdae was flooded, something in his mind shifted, but Madison didn't think that was it. To her, it felt more like her father had become even scarier than before. As it turned out, Minsok had learned that thing's telepathy, and even the zombie itself was shocked. "How can you use my telepathy?" Minsok glared at that eyeball. "How dare you say Madison's name with that disgusting mouth? And what do you mean by letting Madison survive? Are you trying to turn my daughter into a zombie?" The mutated zombie had said earlier that it didn't know what Minsok would become. Now Minsok would tell it the answer himself. "I will find the winged goddess and make her regret creating a defective product like me. I will tear her apart piece by piece in endless agony." Then, Minsok pulled the safety pin and blew up the high-level special mutated zombie. Thinking back on that, Minsok's rage began rising again. At that moment, Shin Ji-woo found Minsok and told him, "We've figured out the meaning of the number carved inside the underground fortress. After converting the number into latitude and longitude, we obtained a set of coordinates." Minsok asked, "Where do the coordinates point?" Shin Ji-woo answered, "Olympic Road in Songbin District." Minsok frowned and listened carefully. It was another city, a place called S-City.